What's up, everybody? Welcome to You Rankin with me today. Sorry. First, my name is Chadwick Webb. My normal co-host James Tancock is not here. He is not that big of a fan of this person, apparently, so he hasn't listened to a lot of her music. But we are ranking Taylor Swift albums, and this is actually the first time we've ever done a ranking of a discography. So this is going to be very interesting to see how this works. But yeah, she's really big right now. Obviously, I mean she kind of always has been, except for when she first started. But today she has been never bigger. So and we're planning to hopefully get this. Hopefully you'll be watching this on her birthday, as we're planning to release that then as well, December 13th. So but yeah, without further ado, let's introduce the other people on here. As usual, we have Dylan down there. We have Kerri over that way. We have Charles over that way. Those are the people that are sometimes normally on here. And then we have our first new guest, Hanna, the wife of Charles. And welcome,
Hi,
Hanna,
Hannah.
first time.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you're very welcome to be here. We're very excited to have you. Because everyone here is a pretty big Taylor Swift fan. Me kind of new in the game a little bit because I haven't always been like a big Swiftie, but I'm getting there. I've been listening to her nonstop since October. So yeah. How this show works, if you haven't seen it, is we're going to go through our lists. We have made lists before this of the 10 albums. So we're going to start with our number 10s and we're going to work our way up to our number ones. So we're going to go around. We're going to all say what our 10s are first. And then if anybody has anything in someone's top three, that person will then be able to say, wait for it. I punts. What are some of the things we say? Like normally something like that. Like I have that a lot higher. That's in my top three. Whatever you want to say to let us know that you love that one way more than someone who put it in 10. And
We can say "Shake It Off."
yeah, shake it off. There you go. You can say shake it off. That's a great one.
I was looking through the list of songs. I was like, "What works?"
Now we have Bad Blood because you put that in 10. Yeah, so we'll do that until we get to the very top, and then at the very end, once we know what everybody's full rankings are, my beautiful wife Kerri is going to then go ahead and let us know what our overall ranking is for the entire panel. So I'm very excited for this. Well, this is like months in the working. So let's get started. I'll go ahead. Well, yeah, I'll go ahead with my number 10, and then we'll just go around the board and say what it is. My number 10 is the debut album Taylor Swift. Charles, what is your number 10?
Same album debut by Taylor Swift.
Kerri, what is your number 10?
Also, Taylor Swift.
Hanna, 10.
I also selected debut.
All right, Dylan.
Yeah, I have debut.
So we can go ahead and talk about this now. There's no shake it offs or bad blood here. So far, we all unanimously selected the debut album, and I had once considered not doing that because I actually find this album to be very, very cute. It's mostly just like Taylor writing a lot of songs before she really even knew what the world was yet. Like she's writing things about what she's heard people have experienced and stuff like that. So we don't really get a lot of like the deep, actual experiential stuff that she'll have later on. But that being said, I really like I don't know, I guess fake Southern accent that she has, the just adorableness of like the, kind of 16-year-old writing. Kind of what you would expect of someone who just moved to Nashville or went to Nashville to be able to try to be a country music star. And I actually really enjoy listening to this album. And so I'll just say right here now, I like every single Taylor Swift album to a different extent. This is not one that I think is bad. It's just, it's not as inspired as a lot of other ones. But I'm glad that this one exists because now we wouldn't get anything that we got after it because of this. And people saw the star that is Taylor Swift in this album. So, yeah, and there's a lot of songs I really love from it. You know, I could go through a list, but I think my favorite, love like "Stay Beautiful," "Teardrops on My Guitar" is a classic. Tim McGraw, I don't know. They're all great, to be honest. They're all fun, at least. So yeah, Charles, what do you think about the debut?
Yeah, I'm with you, Chad. I really like this album. It's a lot of fun. It feels, I think you make a good point about how she's writing songs about things that she hasn't necessarily experienced for the first time herself. Some of them they are, but like it just kind of has, there's something kind of pure about just like hearing someone growing up writing about what they believe love or life should be like. Um, I do think her two strongest songs on there are Tim McGraw and Teardrops on My Guitar. Those are those are just so well written, and they give you like a teeny hint of like the songwriter that she's going to become, especially with how Teardrops builds over the course of the song. It just very much like it's stuff that she would later like just completely master on like Back to December. Um, so I feel like Debut's a great album, but as someone that is not a big country fan, this is the closest to a pure country album she has, and so it's never going to be my most listened. It'll be something I'll put on like every like 10 years if I need to remind myself what she sound like at the beginning, but it's a fun album.
They can't all be great debut albums like Arcade Fire's Funeral. Hey, even Radiohead had Pablo Honey. So there you go.
Yeah.
Kerri, what do you think about Taylor Swift's first album?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's her best album, and I think that's why it's unanimously last. I think the rest of these, I don't think we'll agree on another single ranking going forward because the other albums are so fantastic. You know, this one it's fantastic. It's fantastic, I think, for a debut of a young artist. It has some great songs, like our song. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
A lot of the other songs have really grown on me, like Picture to Burn. I think that's like a really fun song. Should Have
It
Said
is,
No
yeah.
is a really fun song. I as younger, you know, first introduced to Taylor Swift through like our song and Teardrops on My Guitar and Tim McGraw. So it's a good album to listen to and I think reflect on some of those younger years, and there are definitely some standout songs from it. But I think as an album, it's there's also songs that I think aren't as great on the album.
Yeah, and I will say I actually forgot. I do think our song is the standout of the album. That's the one I have the fun with the most. Hannah, what do you think about the debut album?
Well, I think I echo a lot of what's been said already, but I think all of her albums get a passing grade from me, and I have learned to appreciate Debut more now than ever before. I was one of those people that was too cool for Taylor Swift, never ever would listen to country. And now I can name several songs on this album I like, and I really appreciate that it really does foreshadow what her songwriting will eventually be. And I think you can kind of see how her aspirations for how she sees herself surpass what her actual abilities are at the time. So it's really cute. And I'm so excited for Taylor's version of this to come out
Mhm.
Yeah,
because I cannot wait to see how she reinterprets it now. Some of these songs are really good songs, and I think they'll be elevated when now that her vocals are like at their peak. And so, yeah, that's basically where I'm at. And I guess the other thing is, if you haven't listened to her version of Should Have Said No with the Jonas Brothers, you should. It's really good.
yeah, great thoughts. I'm actually also very interested in the Taylor's version of this one because you know, like you said, the vocals will be stronger, but will that lose a lot of the charm that this album carries because it's so old. It's not old because none of us are old, but yeah. Anyways, Dylan, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what everyone has said. I mean, it's very clearly a debut album, and she's only gotten better since, but it's definitely a strong starting point. I'm like Charles, I don't love country music, and it's a very purely country. So I just have never really had the urge to re-listen to it. And, I don't like to re-listen to it because the Taylor's version hasn't come out yet, and I don't like to, give my money elsewhere. But it has some great tunes that I think have still endured the test of time, like we mentioned. Some songs are very interesting given like her whole her whole arc as a musician with like the feminist stuff in her music too, because there's like a few songs where it's like, I'm not me without my man, and I think it's going to be really cool to see how she reinterprets that when she does release this next version. So I'm really excited. And I like how she's ending her versions with this one, like she's ending it with this one, because the next one's Reputation, and then it's this one. So I'm very, very interested to see how this kind of like wraps up that project too, because I think this is obviously one of the more meaningful ones to her. But yeah, you all highlighted the best songs on this album, so I'm excited that it's being represented and talked about, but it ranks lowest for me.
All right. So now we're gonna go into our nines, and we'll see if we get another. Probably not gonna get a unanimous here. Especially with what I have written down. Charles, what is your number 9?
Reputation.
All right, Kerri, what is your? Oh, and that's also. Shit, hold on, I'm sorry. It's also to Shake It Off for me. So.
Oh no, it's in your top 3.
Hold on. Kerri, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is Evermore.
Interesting. Okay, Hanna, what is your number 9?
That's a Shake It Off for me. My number 9
same.
is Speak Now.
Okay, and Dylan, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is also Speak Now.
All
That's
the
Shake
last
It Off for
3,
me.
the last 3 album, Speak Now and Evermore are Shake It Off for me as well.
Wow.
This is hands down probably gonna maybe gonna be one of the biggest Shake It Offs. In fact, it has the song Shake It Off. It's 1989 is my number 9.
Top 3.
Yeah, I figured.
Wait, is it our top 5 or our top 3?
Top 3.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Okay. I did not think I was going to do that, by the way, but it just kind of factored that way. But anyways, yeah. So, Kerri, I'm sorry. What are we talking about? Anything? We're going to our 8s.
Sorry, hold on. Chad, you said 1989. Charles, you
Mhm.
said Reputation. I said Evermore. Hannah, you said Speak Now. Dylan, you said Speak Now. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was like, I'm missing someone.
So, since we don't have a majority, let's actually go on to our 8s.
Yeah.
Kerri, what is your 8?
Oh my gosh. Okay. My number 8 is Reputation.
Okay, and the still that is a Shake It Off for me. Hanna, what is your 8?
My number 8 is Red.
That's
Okay.
a top
That's a Shake
3
It Off for me.
Yeah.
Nice. Dylan, what is your 8?
My 8 is also Reputation.
Okay, and my 8 is also Red. Charles, what is your 8?
Fearless.
All right, cool.
That's a Shake It Off for me. I don't think we're going to be talking about any of these for quite a bit.
Yeah, we still don't have a consensus, right?
I don't know if we're going to be able to reach one at this point. Let me see.
We're almost there with Reputation, I feel like. Yeah.
No, because Reputation's
top
in your
3.
top 3.
Oh, correct. Yeah, you're right. I
So
see.
there's 3 that haven't been said. One of them is in my top 3. So there's 2 potentially we can talk about before we get to our top 3.
All right.
Really
So we did 10, 9, and 8. Hanna, what is your number 7?
Well, here's the thing. As we're going through this, I'm feeling like I want to shuffle my order, but I think it's too late for that because I think I really let down one of my picks with where I've put it.
Oh no.
It's not too late.
But sorry, what?
It's not too late. You can always change.
Okay. Well, it's towards the top, so that's okay. So what number are we on then? 7?
7.
Fearless.
Is your 7?
Yeah.
What is your 8, 9, and 10 then? Well, 8 and 9, I mean.
I don't think it's changed,
My
right?
bottoms debut, and then Speak Now, and then Red, and then Fearless. So
Okay,
nothing has
so-
changed that I've said, except for one of my Shake It Offs is no longer a Shake It Off.
Yeah.
Oh, which
Interesting.
one?
Evermore.
Is that a shake it off for anyone?
It is for me.
Okay.
Okay.
So it just okay.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So let's see. We're on sevens now. Hannah said it's Fearless.
Mhm.
Dylan, what is your 7?
One we haven't talked about. Let's see if it's in anyone's top 3. Midnights.
Shake It Off.
Oh no.
Uh,
Oh yes, it's a good. Oh, it's not a bad. Oh no, it's a good thing because we all like different albums. But
There's one more that could potentially, I
we'll
think,
see.
be
Yeah.
one
Mine,
more.
my number 7 is also going to be Fearless. Charles, what is your 7?
Lover.
That is a Shake It Off.
Okay, then officially,
All albums are all different albums.
My share.
There's one we haven't mentioned yet. But it's
yes,
in
but
my top
it's
3.
in my
so it
top
doesn't matter.
three.
Yeah, okay. It's in my top 3 as well. So
All right.
Um,
Kerri, what is your 7?
It's a mess, y'all.
I'm not prepared. I
Okay.
should have labeled these. Hold on. I keep losing track of where I am. My
mean,
number 7 is also Lover.
If we have trouble figuring out like what we could do in descending order of likeness, we can I guess do chronological since we've started with debut, but yeah. It would cause a very wild discussion because some of us will love the album and some
We
of us
could-
will not love it as much.
We could do it as soon as a majority of people had said it, even
Yeah.
if it's in our top 3.
we've
at
had
this point.
three Reputation mentions, 2 Speak Nows, 2 Lovers, 3 Fearlesses.
Yeah.
That's it. That's where we're at.
I would say maybe we do Reputation and Fearless now.
Okay, we could do that
As
if you
soon as
want.
we hit 3, because otherwise we're just going to be going through our
We
rankings,
could
which
hit
is
up.
fine.
So we're on our 6. Let's pencil that, and let's talk about Reputation. That was the first thing that was said. All right. I don't know who wants to start. Charles, you start.
Okay. So I feel like I'm excited to hear what y'all think because I'm gonna kind of start it out on a little bit more of a negative note. I think Reputation is a song that I can appreciate objectively. It has some really great songs on it. I think it's a really important album for a lot of people. I am not one of those people. The song, it's okay. I guess to start out first, after 1989 came out, it became kind of popular to hate Taylor Swift again. And for mostly awful reasons. There was misogyny, there was the Kanye West Kim Kardashian made up video that they did to like slander her for like a year or two. Most of the reasons for why people came up with reasons to hate Taylor Swift were just sexist BS. But there were also some legitimate things that happened during the 1989 tour and the public like record that were not okay. I think some people really enjoyed her taking a lot of celebrities out and showing off at the concerts, but it also kind of gives off a little bit of a bourgeoisie like vibe. Like, hey, look at my friends. We're up on this stage. I hang out with them and like play games. And thanks for visiting us and seeing them for about 3 hours of your life. I know that's not the intention, but when it's happening every single concert, it starts to feel a little bit more virtue signaling than anything else. But again, these are just people's opinions. So I think one of the things that's I think more controversial about this album for me is that I feel like she was going for a way to be inclusive, and her message, at least back then, was I'm inclusive because look at how many friends of color I have. When in reality, what she should have been doing is I'm inclusive and this is what I'm going to do with my voice. This is what I'm going to do with my actions to change the world around me. That's what she eventually would go on to do. So for me, I'm giving a lot of like background information to share that like this album, before I even get to the songs, it just has a lot of negative vibes to me. It's when Taylor was to me the most unlikable person she was, as someone that I followed extensively and I listened to her music. And so to like get to the actual music itself, I feel like it tries to be a cohesive album, but everything that it does well, another album did better. Getaway Car is amazing. It's also another version of Style. New Year's Day, Gorgeous, Endgame are like great songs, I have difficulty listening to them and getting the same kind of appreciation out of them. I think Delicate is probably the best song on this record. It's so good. And for me, I feel like that's the stuff that she started to like really master and love her. But just everything, like the party vibes that everybody else gets from this album, I just get, man, this is when like things were like real dark. And it was really hard to be a fan of Taylor. Um, I'm hoping that when Taylor's version comes out, I'll gain a deeper appreciation for this album. But for me, I was relieved that after this album, she kind of did another pivot and went and focused more on ballads for a little bit. Because for me, I just even like from song to song, it's like a completely different vibe change. Like some it's electronic, some it's like a slow down ballad with like weird samples. So I don't know. I'll stop there, but it's an album that's difficult for me to enjoy, but I can acknowledge that it's really important for a lot of people.
All right, great. Kerri, what do you think about Reputation?
Okay, I didn't really know a lot of that background. I do remember she got some flack, especially from like the Shake It Off music video. You know, I think it was like, you know, all the ballet dancers are really white, and then like, you know, maybe a little bit of, I don't know. I remember some stuff about that. And Reputation, I don't know. I hadn't heard anything about her, like, you know, bringing other artists up on stage. And I imagine it was actually part of an effort to actually be more inclusive. And maybe she didn't go and about it maybe in the best way. But I think now that's probably not really an issue. I think it's clear from, you know, the people she employs and how she treats her employees and everything, that there's not really an issue there. I think she's always been pretty amazing about charity. But she usually, I think it's hard for her to win. I think she gets insulted when she doesn't fully display her like when she doesn't display her charity, she's not doing enough. And then when she like just like publicly announces her charity, then she's showing off. I think it's hard for her, for a lot of these issues, for her to not to try to balance it. And I feel like everyone just has these kind of unrealistic expectations. But she's just a human being with a massive team and finances behind her. I think she's doing the best she can in some respects.
Those two qualifiers at the end with lots of money and a giant team are great.
Anyways, the album itself, I would say, the most unfamiliar period I was with Taylor Swift. I kind of like fallen off of listening to her pretty hardcore at this point. So Reputation, I had heard some of the songs just from, you know, being in a society where Taylor Swift is popular, but a lot of these were new for me. I did think it was probably going to be my least favorite album at first, but it wound up, I mean, it's pretty low, but that's just mostly because I love some of the other albums so much more. I think I really love so many of the songs on this album, though. A lot of them have grown for me. Some of them I don't really like the original versions, like Dancing with Our Hands Tied. I don't like the original, but the acoustic version she did for her Eras tour, I think, or no, for Reputation, I think the Reputation tour, I think, was like fantastic. So this one, it's an interesting vibe. I feel like it doesn't match her personality as much, but I do think she personally was in kind of a dark place that like expressed the concept of this album. But it is almost like, except for certain songs, the concept of the album of being kind of like hardcore and stuff doesn't match quite a few of the songs within the album. There's a little bit of like tonal. It's very much like a lead up to Lover. A lot of these songs are about her, you know, falling in love, which is a little different from like kind of the tone, the vibe that's set by this. But anyways, I'm talking way too much. I really like this album. I'm sorry it's so low for me.
No worries. Yeah, Hannah, what do you think about Reputation?
I'm like dying to speak now.
Oh my gosh, she said it.
I have this album as number 3. This was the one I reshuffled
Oh.
because when I realized everyone else was putting it low, I needed to jump to its defense because I actually really love it. I didn't always feel that way. I did find it to be jarring and abrasive when I first heard it. Um, However, a few things have made me change my mind. One of those things is watching Reputation Stadium Tour live, the movie that's going to be taken off Netflix at the end of the month. If you haven't seen that, it really does help recontextualize the music because I think seeing it performed visually contributes a lot to like the tone and the meaning and the art form, and it makes it even more clear that she's playing a character here. And so all of the feedback that you've shared about this like seeming out of character for her, like you're right, but like she's leaning into it. Like that's the whole point, is she feels like her reputation has been taken away from her and she is being made out to be something she's not. And so she's like, fine, like I'm just gonna play along with this and be the person you think I am, and it's like all a joke and she's in on the joke. And I think sometimes people can take Taylor Swift too seriously and forget that she is such a goofy, like, dork. Like, in her Time profile that just came out for Person of the Year, she's comparing herself to Thanos. Like, she is,
Yeah.
Yep.
she's not taking herself as seriously as other people are taking her. So, aside from that, I think I need to correct some misinformation that Charles put out into the world here. With the lead up to Reputation. A lot of I feel like a lot of what you said, Charles, with all love and respect, was criticism that was applied to the wrong era, and you're getting your eras mixed up because the inclusivity
Ooh.
feedback is a fair criticism. I think that's more apt for the Lover era. That's when the Miss
Oh,
Americana
really?
documentary came out, and she definitely had been facing some accusations of being performative with what she does and doesn't support and when she speaks out. I also think that your some of your Reputation criticism is based on things that happened during the 1989 World Tour.
Hmm.
Particularly bringing a lot of celebrities and guests up on stage. Um, that it was a thing that happened, and you're right that it turned some people off. And I definitely remember reading headlines about like her bringing up her girl squad on stage and how they're all like the similar appearance and body type, and it's not inclusive. And kind of rolling my eyes at that because like yeah, that like isn't fun to look at. But
Hmm.
I think it's I just watched the 1989 World Tour movie yesterday with my sister. We pressed play at the same time on YouTube, and we're on the phone with each other the whole time. And it just that's why I like have that information, I guess, at the forefront of my mind about the eras mixing up. So I totally understand where you're coming from aside from those points, and I don't think any of the other criticism is invalid. But I just wanted to set the record straight.
I think I wanted to respond and say I think for me when I view kind of albums, I view them as a commentary on the events that came before. And so I feel like I would have wanted Taylor to actually deal with that. That's why I mentioned the 1989 tours, because Reputation is her chance to respond to those accusations. But there's not really any, the inclusivity part just doesn't any have any presence in that album at all. And it would be addressed more in Lever, but that's like, again, like years later. And I get that, like, we should be, I think Taylor Swift often is not treated as as an entire woman, like all facets, as a nuanced individual. And that's part of the reasons why I like her, is because at this point, in my eyes, she's making a lot of mistakes. And so I guess that's why Reputation is hard for me, is because I would have wanted that transition that she went into Lover. I would have wanted that to happen during Reputation instead of an album later.
Yeah. All right. Yep. Definitely. Dylan, what do you think?
Yeah, so I had this at 8. Actually, when I first like ranked these before listening to them again, this was my number 10 below Debut. I just really didn't like it when it came out, kind of for similar reasons that I think it was either Charles or Kerri said, where it was like advertising itself to be so much darker and edgier than a lot of it actually was. There were moments like that, and a lot of the singles were edgier, but like if you listen to the album in itself, a lot of them are just soft love songs, like they're soft sappy love songs. They just got a little bit of a twist or an edge to them. And I think that's why like the singles, like, like look what you made me do is like the big one that was like the marquee song, but like that's my least favorite one on the album because of that. So I appreciate going a different direction, but yeah, it feels a little odd when you are looking at it in the grand scheme of her music, because also then she completely pivots back with Lover to where it's like it didn't feel like as smooth a transition as like an overall discography is concerned. But the reason it is higher now is because after seeing the actual Eras Tour film and then watching back the concert of Reputation, similar to what Hannah said, like the actual performance of it does elevate the album, I think, a lot. And I think taking performance into account outside of the studio helped in my rankings and shuffled a lot around. Honestly, there were stuff that was higher that I put lower because of the tour and the performance and vice versa. And this was one that I think went up because I think, when you see some of these songs, even Look What You Made Me Do, which I have not liked at all. I actually liked it when I saw it on screen. So I think there's a testament to the way it's performed and the style of it. It's just not necessarily my style, the way the debut isn't necessarily my cup of tea because of the country of it all. This one just isn't necessarily what I want to listen to, but if I'm at like a club or something, I want to listen to this over like Folklore and Evermore, but like as an album, I don't like this as much as those ones. So it's lower for me, but I kind of have like a similar criticism and agreement with everyone before already. So it's an interesting mix of thoughts, but I also love Don't Blame Me. That song, it gets better every time I hear it. And I think it's also because of how it was performed in the Eras Tour film. But like that song is creeping its way to my top 10, 8, 9 songs of hers. So yeah, but that's also the only one I like really listen to over and over again. So
yeah, I mean, could you imagine them playing Folklore in the club? Everybody just swinging, swinging
Right.
Mirrorball.
My point is that like if different songs fit different settings better, and I think for concert, we'll talk about it when we get to Folklore. But.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so my kind of background is that like I said, I was listening to, like, I heard like a lot of her singles growing up. She's always been like a part of my life, but just kind of over there. Like I'd see a music video, I'd like You Belong With Me, stuff like that. I'd be like, oh shit, I like that, but like I never really dove deep into her discography until there was one. So when Lover came out, that's when I, hence the shirt. That's the thing that like really made me want to be a Taylor Swift fan. And then I would do like a big listen to her discography. And I remember getting to Reputation. Then I was like, this is totally like a skip album. Like I do not like this whatever this is, kind of a deal. Like all the songs just kind of bleed together. And I can't even pick apart the songs that much to me. And it just didn't work. And so even when I saw the Eras Tour, I told Dylan, Charles, Hanna, Kerri, I was like, Reputation is probably my least favorite. Since then, I've been listening to her since October. This is one of the albums that I would, when I got to it, I'd get so excited. And I'd be like, all right, here we go. Putting on my shades. I got Gorgeous coming on. I got my triangle. So I was like, I got this down. So this is one, like, because I love my little like party albums a lot of the times, and I don't let a lot of the times like background stuff affect things. Sometimes they do, but not much. I mean, Dylan can attest to this when we do our show on his channel, that like a lot of the times when there's background stuff from movies, a lot of the times I don't really let it like affect my judgment of the thing itself. But that's totally fair. If you're someone that does, it can make you rank it a little bit less or something like that. But for me, it's just musically. It's just all I really care about a lot of the times. Red is an album that I'll get to that I have a little bit of an issue with the actual like behind the scenes kind of stuff. A little bit that affects where it is, but Reputation I think is just a banger from like beginning to end. Like I love it starts out really hard with are you ready for this, and then like you dive in and then you go through it, and it's just like not every song maybe is like an absolute banger, but like every song has like grown on me a lot, and I have some that are more favorite than others. But like every like couple songs is like another one that I'm so excited for. And I know that, we'll talk about 1989 where people say it's like a perfect pop album and stuff. And for me, I'm like, a lot of the songs in there are kind of corny for me. But Reputation, that's more my vibe when I'm like, that's my pop album. It's just a different kind of pop. And I think that really, and when I first started listening to it, when I was listening to Endgame, I was like, she doesn't need a lot of these features and stuff. Just give me Taylor. I don't really need all these, rappers to come in and stuff. But then also, I think Ed Sheeran really knocks it out of the park with his verse. So, yeah, and then ending on New Year's Day when it's like a straight up party and the party's over at the very end. I love that. I think it's really great for like being like a fun like concept album. I love Hannah's thing where she talked about it being a character. It's almost like her Sergeant Pepper's. So, there you go. Hey, it's up there. It's in my top 3, so I can compare it to Sergeant Pepper's. But yeah, I think Reputation is a lot of fun. I'm sure if I look at the backgrounds, maybe I'll think a little bit differently. We did watch most of the Reputation thing on Netflix. The only problem was we're having like sound issues with it, but it was really great. I love her costumes for it. I just love the style. And yeah, so that's where I'm coming from. That's why it's super high. But yeah, so now we can get into, what is it, Kerri?
Oh, wait,
Fearless?
Chad, is it
Yeah.
okay if I follow up a little bit there?
Yeah.
Okay, I just really love a lot of what you said, and I related to it a lot. And I guess just something I was thinking about as everyone was speaking is that I really do understand everyone's perspective here, because back when, Reputation era was like actually occurring, I felt the same way, but it's just boggling my mind how opposite. It's like at some point a switch flips. You
Yeah.
either love it or hate it. It's all or nothing. And it's like unfathomable to me that like you wouldn't think the whole thing is a bop, and it like takes you through a whole story, and there's the first half that's like super hardcore, and then it like starts transitioning, and like Getaway Car is like taking you on the journey from like the like ragey part to like the love, like the pre-lover predecessor part. I don't know, I just wanted to just echo what you said, and just but also acknowledge that I think everyone else's reactions are so valid. And that's one of the things that makes me love this album a lot, is because it's divisive but it makes sense why it is.
Absolutely. I actually love that because I think about like Dylan and I talk about movies all the time together. And there's so many times we come over like a divisive movie or something like that. And we may both be on the same wavelength, like the Halloween Kills, or we may be like just complete opposites, like a Don't Look Now. So, it is what it is. And here we are, kind of complete opposites with our Reputation. Maybe Dylan will get on my wavelength at some point, but who knows? Maybe not. And Charles too, Kerri. But it is what it is. Let's see what our 6. Or wait, we're not doing 6s. Are we talking?
We can talk about Fearless.
Oh yeah, that was the other one with 3.
Yep. All right, Kerri, do you want to start with Fearless?
Yes, I do. Because I don't know if I have this the highest ranked. I don't know if anyone else said like Shake It Off or Wait for It or whatever we're saying, but this is my number 2.
Nice.
That's cool.
I don't know. It's just, I was looking back. I had this, it is ranged everywhere, I think, from number 1 in my ranking to, 5 or 6 at some point. Like, I've shifted this around so much. But actually, Dylan sending out the bracket the other day of the songs really helped me kind of like visualize a little bit more and like think about which of these songs are actually my favorite songs that Taylor Swift has ever made. And Fearless was kind of the album that it has a ton of nostalgia for me. And one of the songs on it, yeah,
Nice.
one of the songs on it was the only slow song played at my prom. And it was not one of the many love songs on that album. It was one of the breakup songs, which is infuriating.
Which one?
It's White Horse.
Oh, yeah.
That was the only slow song played.
Did we at least slow dance to that one? Because I was there.
Yeah, we did. We did. There's ones like 15. My mom used to like make these little like DVD videos of like pictures of like me and my sister, and like that it wouldn't have been on mine when I turned 15 because I would have been too old, but it definitely was on my sister's. And like, I like Hey Steven, I remember in
So
Love
good.
Story, and it wasn't on the original Fearless album, but it was part of that era, and it was on the Taylor's version, Today Was a Fairy Tale. Like, I used to listen to those songs over and over and over again. Fearless itself, I used to listen to over and over again. So I think like when I was finalizing this ranking, I was like, it holds such a place in my heart. It is like the first thing when I think of Taylor Swift, I still think back to Fearless. And that was really her. I think in the more of the pop world, it was still like considered country kind of, but definitely in the pop world, I think that was her really big crossover moment was Fearless. And that's still like who I kind of see her as.
Yeah, and you still something was able to top it. So,
Yes.
but Hannah, what do you think about Fearless?
Well, I had it ranked lower. I had it at 7, but not because I don't like Fearless. I actually love it. And Kerri, I just love what you were sharing about the nostalgia. I just don't have the nostalgia connection with most of these because I am, a Swiftie that became a Swiftie later in life. And of course, everyone knows Love Story. I loved that song when it came out, and I still do. But I just couldn't get over the country connection, and I just wasn't secure enough in myself to be comfortable liking something that girly. But now, in the year of Barbie and the year of Taylor Swift being Time Person of the Year and stuff, I'm just really happy that the current generation of young girls can hopefully be much more confident with liking the things that they like. And I'm just really happy that you had that, Kerri, with this album. And it makes me really smile because as these re releases are coming out, it's giving me my opportunity to experience the eras and find my own connection to the music. And so, I don't have like a prom story with these things, but that's okay. Like I was able to find my own things that I connect to with it. Like for example, the best day like just hits differently when you're an adult and
Mm-hmm.
you are
That's
looking
sweet.
back and thinking of just growing up with your family when you now I just really miss my family, and so that
Mm-hmm.
song gives me lots of feelings. And I think what's the other one? Superman's not on this album though, is it? That's Red. Never
No,
mind. That's
No,
it's
this one.
on
It
this
is.
one or Speak Now.
It's on Fearless.
Oh no, it's on Speak Now.
Oh, it's on Speak Now. Okay.
Is
See,
it?
that was another one that's the same kind of vibe for me in terms of just like looking back at it as an adult. But, that's besides the point. I also think that the vault tracks, Fearless, has my second favorite vault out of all of the re-releases. I think this is just an amazing selection
Mm-hmm.
of songs that I can't believe like we didn't even know existed, and now we're so lucky to have them.
But what is the second favorite vault?
This is my second favorite vault. My first favorite vault is 1989.
Agree.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant a specific favorite song. Never mind. I misunderstood.
Oh,
Yeah, nice. Dylan, what do you think about Fearless?
Yeah, I haven't brought this one up yet. It's higher. It's number 5 for me, so it's like right in the middle, but it's in my top half. I'll admit I was going into this a little nervous because the first time I heard this, it was like, oh yeah, it's the country. It's another country, more country based one, and I wasn't a fan. But when I re-listened to this one when Taylor's version came out, I really, really dug it. And kind of the reason I bumped it up so high is because of what Hannah said. The vault tracks are so good, and the vault tracks in this are so amazing. Mr. Perfectly Fine is my favorite of this whole album. I'm like,
Yes.
wow, this is such a good song.
Love that one.
But like Love Story was like the first introduction I had with Taylor. Like I didn't know Teardrops on My Guitar. I didn't know our song. Like I somehow missed that when Debut comes out. Maybe I was too young, but then when this one came out, I remember You Belong With Me and Love Story being so big, and that's what got me into her music. I wasn't like a Swiftie then, but I really connected to those songs. And when I was a freshman in high school, we did a production of Pride and Prejudice, and there were so many people that auditioned that they couldn't take everyone. So she added a dance ensemble of ballroom dancers for the ball scenes, and she would have the Vitamin String Quartet play Taylor Swift music but strings music. So we danced to Love Story. So it was literally all these freshmen that she didn't have roles for would come on twice in the show. It's like a 3-hour show, twice to dance to Love Story and You Belong With Me, violin, cello, string quartet versions. And that was like my freshman year. So it was also kind of fun too, because I learned all these like beautiful waltzes and dances to these songs. So like it holds a special spot in my heart for that reason. I really like Fearless, so I'm happy that Kerri put it all the way at 2, and I'm happy to rep it at 5. So yeah, it's a good album.
Yeah, and it doesn't have anything to do with Fearless, but our song. I just remember when Kerri and I went to see the Eras tour. That's the song that she perked up, was like started singing. So yeah, that she
that was
really
her only. Was that her only debut she sang? Right, I think, and it was a secret song in the
Yes,
Eras tour.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she did some of the other, like, in other concerts, like, sometimes
yeah.
they do surprise songs, but yeah.
Yeah, Fearless is interesting because this one is, I don't know. This one like really hit me, and it was higher. This one was gonna be like my number 4 or something, like it was gonna be like really high, and then it started going lower just as I started to appreciate other albums more. So I really like this one, and actually really makes me sad that I have it down at 7 now, because I'm like throwing albums up. Like this one's kind of a masterpiece. This one's so great. And then I'm like, but Fearless is making its way down. It's making me really sad because I love so many songs. I actually think this one a lot of the times when I'm thinking about what makes a great album is what flows super well, but also like how many songs are meaningful or sounds like, something only Taylor could make, or something that sounds so unique and not like other stuff. And I think Fearless is just a really great sophomore album, especially with, you see Taylor Swift, we all ranked it lowest, and then we were like, well, that is, it's kind of immature, but it's cute, kind of a deal. But Fearless is where she's starting to, I guess, become fearless and like really like write things that she knows about more, and like, just come up with like really great like writing. I feel like that's where it started, all the way back to Fearless, I think. And just a lot of them are bops. Like Hey Steven was one of my favorite, because I just love the I could just get down to that all the time. You're Not Sorry, that is a song that kind of hits me a lot, because it's about relationships, but it's also kind of just about like anybody who would say they're sorry but they don't really mean it, kind of a deal. There's just so many good, like The Best Day, I think, is so sweet. Yeah, so White Horse, You Belong With Me is the one that I really uh I liked from back in the day too, when that music video used to come on all the time. I'd watch it all the way through. And then 15, I think, is probably one of the best ones on there as well, because of just like, I don't know, it's just so sweet, and it's just like talking about innocence, and I love when Taylor talks about like innocence and stuff like that a lot of the times. Some of my favorite songs are like that. Yeah, so I think this one's great. I will say one thing about the Taylor's version versus the OG is that the Taylor's version in Hey Steven, I don't like as much as the original. And the reason is because when she says, well, but would she write a song for you? And then she laughs, the laugh feels so forced in the new one. But in the original, it's like so genuine and just kind of like young. And that she's older now, so you can't really help that. She's like, oh, I gotta record this so I can, not make my money, but so I can own the songs and all that stuff. I support everything she's doing, but I just kind of wish it kind of was the same sometimes. So it's hard. It's like you want to support what she's doing because you think it's the right thing to do and you think it's correct and all that. But sometimes I'm like, but I'm gonna listen to the original Hey Steven real quick, and then kind of a deal. But yeah. Anyways, Charles, what do you think about Fearless?
Yeah, I really like Fearless. Fearless is the album that I really listened to the most, I would say. Speak Now is the one that really made me get into Taylor Swift, though. But Fearless is just a great album. I have nothing really bad to say about it. I think the only reason it's ranked so low is just because country is just not my type of music. I tried desperately to like country, and it just never really vibes with me. But I don't think that takes away from how good the songwriting is. Hannah, I'm really glad you mentioned The Best Day, because that's one of my favorites too. That one, Fearless and Love Story. But The Best Day, it's just a beautiful song, and I'm glad that you mentioned specifically that it hits a little bit different now that we're adults. I think The Best Day is a song that you can listen to it like every so often as you get older, and you can get something completely different out of it. And I think that's really special. But yeah, it's a country album, so it's going to be ranked pretty low on my list.
And the thing about it too is that The Best Day kind of gives you a little bit of parenting advice. How do you deal with a kid that
Mhm.
is their friends are mean to them? It's like, do you
Yep.
encourage them to go and fight them, or is like, no, just distract them and say, this is the best way to, I don't know. I think about that now that I'm a parent. So there you go.
100%.
Yeah, so now we can move on to our sixes, Kerri.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And we're 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Dylan, what is your six?
So number 6 is Evermore.
That is also my six, and I'm kind of mad about it because I really like it. But Charles, what is your six?
I'm just double checking. Okay, my 6 is Midnights.
All right, Kerri, what is your six?
Shake it off.
Nights.
My number 6 is 1989.
All right. And Hannah, what is your six?
My number 6 is Lover.
And that is a Shake It Off.
Yeah, but I think we're past the point of.
Anyways, yeah.
Oh,
So
sorry. I just was still shouting it
No,
out.
it's
because
okay.
It was, yeah.
Sorry, Kerri. Is there anything we can talk about now?
If we're still going by once a majority of people have shouted it out, because everything, I think everything besides Taylor Swift is a Shake It Off.
What is the most we can talk about now?
We could talk about Evermore and Lover.
All right, let's do that.
Oh, cool.
Let's start with Evermore. And Hannah, can you start with Evermore, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Evermore is one that I demoted in place of Reputation earlier. So I did initially put it in my top 3. Evermore has a special place in my heart because it was like the first album dropped like after I had become a Swiftie. And so I was really, really excited for it. Folklore is actually the one that turned me into a Swiftie, and so Evermore being kind of the sister album to that, obviously I like them for a lot of the same reasons, but just some standouts here for sure, I think, are songs like Champagne Problems,
Yeah.
Ivy, of course, Evermore, and I love the bonus tracks too. I think there's some great bonus tracks on this album that are underrated. And then who can forget the Eras Tour version of Tolerate It, which lives rent free in my brain.
Yeah,
It
that's
is
a
my
good one.
Roman Empire. I need it to be, I need a live version of it released like immediately so that I can listen. The piano intro to it as well. Like that instrumental track is just everything. So, Evermore really stood out live. Charles and I were lucky enough to get tickets to Eras. We saw it in Massachusetts. And I remember, I don't know, I just think the feeling of seeing that live like was completely mirrored seeing the movie in the theaters. And just like the whole conjuring of magic and like the witch coven in the beginning of that part.
So good.
Yeah, just love Evermore. And so it's number 4 for me.
Yeah, shit. Dylan, what do you think about Evermore?
Yeah, it's my number 6, so it's right there in the middle. I really like Evermore. The only thing is that's like, because it is a sister album of another album, when I listen to them, I just prefer the other album. And every time I listen to Evermore, I'm like, oh, I want to go listen to Folklore. So like that's literally the only reason it's lower, but it's still great for all the reasons Folklore is also great. It's just I like more individual songs in Folklore and some of the storytelling better in that. But I mean, Evermore's great. I love Willow, Champagne Problems. Coney Island is also great, especially being a New Yorker. I love Coney Island. Like my subway train I take every day, like the last stop is Coney Island. I never go all the way down there, obviously, because I work in Times Square, so I just get off there. But yeah, there's just something about Coney Island that I love. But yeah, it always has been the sister album to one I like better. So that's why it's not higher.
Yeah. This is so interesting because like Folklore and Evermore, well, I'll talk about Folklore more later, but like this is like always kind of what I wanted Taylor to evolve to, because she's evolved from country to pop. And then I was always like, when is she going to start writing like stuff that I think is actually really good? I've I've gotten better on pop, where like there's a lot of pop albums I think are just fantastic. So I'm not as much of a snob against it as I was. And the same with country. Like I think it depends on like what country we're talking about. Like, Kerri and I, we love like Johnny Cash and stuff like that. Like that still counts as a country. But I understand like if it's like the kind of Florida Georgia line type of stuff, like not really a fan. But I do think Taylor's country is really can be really great, depending on the song. And I loved her evolution from that to pop, but then from that to like folk music, I think is incredible. And we'll talk about that more in Folklore, because there's a lot of like vibes I get that make me think of Sufjan Stevens a lot. It's one of my all-time favorite artists. But yeah, I get a lot of vibes from a lot of other artists that I listen to, and not just that. This album features a lot of artists that I absolutely love, like Bon Iver and The National. I adore those artists so much. I'm more fans of those. Well, I say I'm more fans of National than I am of Taylor Swift, actually. But Taylor Swift has been rising, so she's becoming like one of my favorites now. But yeah, this album I actually think is really, really incredible, and I have such a hard time finding where to place it, because I think I do have that kind of thing where I'm like, what, 2 albums in 1 year? Okay, but then it's like, well, it was COVID kind of a deal, and then I'm like, this one has like No Body, No Crime, which I love. Haim. There's one of my I really love them a lot. But then I'm like, does that really fit on this album that much? So I'm like, I have issues of where it might actually not flow that well, as it doesn't flow as well as Folklore, I think, and stuff. But then again, some of my favorite songs I adore so much are on Evermore, and a lot of them have been growing for me, like Coney Island that Dylan mentioned, has grown on me so much, because I used to think like, I don't really like the National song. This is so weird. How do I not like that song? It has the National in it. And then now it's so grown on me, and I kind of love that song now. It's so slow, and I don't know. This one is so great, but I have it at 6, and I'm just like, why? Because there's so many good albums,
They're
I
all
think.
great.
So
Yeah.
it's hard, but I really like this. I love the style, the clothing, the like Hannah mentioned, the set pieces that go along with it, and just like the vibe. This is probably gonna keep growing on me more and more and more as I listen to it, because I really do love it. So yeah. Charles, what do you think about Evermore?
Yeah, Evermore, I have it very high. It's my number two. And I agree with also everything that has been said about it. I think Dylan, you talked about the Sister album, and for me, I think the only reason that I'm more receptive to Evermore is that I love double albums. I love albums that are sisters. So for instance, Carly Rae did it recently. The Loneliest Time, The Loveliest Time. The National also just did it. M83 did it with Hurry Up Now We're Dreaming.
Oh yeah.
The Foo Fighters even did it, like in a really great way, where they had it was the album with Best of You, but it was a double album, and the second album was just all acoustic. I just have a lot of wonderful memories with double albums, and I think double albums are really ambitious. I view Folklore and Evermore as a double album, that there was just like a delay in release, but I treat them as something that is like one unit. And so for me, it's really difficult for me to give a lot of credit to Folklore, and less to Evermore, because I feel like they were written almost at the same time. I feel like the only reason Evermore came out later was because she felt some of those songs just had felt better and more cohesive on that one. And so for me, it's hard to even divide them. But the only thing that made me feel comfortable putting it down a lower peg is, and like you said, Chad, I'm glad you mentioned this. I really love Haim as well, but No Body, No Crime just does not fit on that album for me.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes up, I'm like, it feels like a Speak Now vault track. And like I love Speak Now. I feel like that would make perfect sense on Speak Now as a vault track. On Evermore, it's so strange. Especially for an album that's so pretty intricately, along with Folklore, like plotted out with all the characters. Nobody No Crime feels like just kind of like this intermission. But I do like this song. I think I'm going to probably talk more about what I really like about Evermore more when we talk about Folklore. But I just wanted to make sure I shared that, like, I really love this album. And I feel bad that I'm going to put a lot of my praise for it in the Folklore. But I feel like Folklore, I agree with a lot of you on this. Folklore is the better one out of the two. But yeah, Champagne Problems, Tis the Damn Season, Willow, Marjorie.
Oh, dude.
They're so good. They're great songs.
I'm glad that you said the thing about Nobody No Crime that you agree, because I really like that song a lot. I have such a lot of fun with it. The character's named Esty. Esty's a member of Haim. It's just, and then they're in the Bejeweled music video. I love their little relationship that they have. But yeah, I think it's like this, and there's one on Red, and then I think 1989 for me that I'm like, I wish this song wasn't in there, and then I think flow a lot better. But I might get people fighting with me on that. But at least with this one person agreed with me. And Nobody No Crime reminds me of like Picture to Burn, where I'm like, I'm not sure if this is a great song, but I'm having a lot of fun with this right now. But yeah, anyways, Kerri, what do you think about Evermore?
Yeah, I had this the lowest ranked, and it's really sad. Like it's just because there's so many great albums, and I love like everything. I feel like, her debut album definitely has it's a debut album from, I think she was what, like 17 when she made it.
16, 17, yeah, 17 because 1989. You're right.
Yeah. Honestly, everything else though, at any given time, it could be like my number one or whatever, starting with Evermore. It's my number 9, but it's mostly because this album took a long time, I think, to grow on me. Just like listening to them all in a row. I think it had the least presence in popular culture. And so I was the least familiar with the songs on Evermore, at least in my experience of popular culture. And also I wasn't making much of an effort to listen to Taylor Swift in 2020. So now the songs have grown on me so much, and I hear you guys like talking about all the songs, and I'm like, oh yeah, I love that song so much. And like, why isn't this higher? And it's mostly just because there's so many great albums. I do really love this one, but I do think, yeah, for me as well, it kind of suffers from like, it is the sister album to Folklore, and I think Folklore just is a little bit better, and it just has more songs I enjoy more. So
Yeah, it definitely Folklore definitely flows better. But I will say, Evermore has probably my favorite song on it, and I don't want to mention what that is because we're doing a song bracket over before. Dylan will plug this, but we're doing a song bracket on his channel. But make sure remind me, Dylan, to let you plug that later. Hannah, you talked about Evermore. You started. All right, Kerri, is there another one we can talk with, or we're going with the 5?
yeah, we can talk about Lover.
Lover. All right. Dylan, do you want to start with Lover?
Yeah, I believe I might have this the highest. Actually, I don't think Chad has said this either, but I have it at number 4. So it's like right in that. Okay, it's right in that like top echelon without cracking that top 3.
Yeah.
Top 3 is probably never going to change for me, but like number 4, Lover. I really like Lover. I think it's one that I loved at the time that I've since kind of just tapered on a little bit, just because I think she does a lot of the stuff in Lover better other places too. But I really do love Lover. It's a great return to form after an album I didn't love as much with Reputation. And it's really interesting to see like this kind of chronicling of like her as a young kid looking toward love, and then like her experiencing young love, and then 1989 being like I'm in love, I want to have love, I'm so happy in love, and now this is more like I'm an adult in love, and like this is not just lust but love, and like it's the name of it's a Lover. So I think there's some really great great tracks. And this has a lot of the more like fun, like upbeat songs for me. Like I love You Need to Calm Down. I love Paper Rings. Paper Rings is so much fun. Like a lot of the more dancey songs in this album are really fun, whereas some others I'm like, those are good singles, but I like some of the more ballady stuff. But then Lover is a great ballad in and of itself. So I think this has really good variety. I love the Archer, the way it, kind of you're waiting for the beat to drop and it never does. Like I love that device as a song. So it's really fun to see her play and just kind of grow and get even richer as a lyricist. But it's not one I always go back to anymore because other albums have come out since that I like, and I've kind of embraced some past albums a lot, but I definitely really like it, and I think it's got some just solid tracks, and I like how Cruel Summer is now finally getting its due as a single, because it's a really great track, and I'm surprised they didn't milk it for what it was worth back then, but now it is. So I'm glad it's still hot as ever. So I love it. Love it.
You lover it. So I'm wearing the shirt, a Lover style shirt is what this is supposed to be, right? Lover is a very interesting album for me, and Kerri, I'll just let you know, it's my number 2. I freaking love this album. I think the reason why is because, as I believe I mentioned earlier, this is the album that made me like want to be a Taylor Swift fan. Like I had not really paid much attention at all throughout. And this was actually the first album that she just recorded on her own. Like there's not going to be a Taylor's version because this is it. So kind of a deal, which I think is really cool that it's the first one. And then like when this came out, like a few months after this came out, I started listening to it. I probably heard one of the songs and I got really interested. I just listened to the whole album and I just vibed with it so much that I was just like, holy, this is what Taylor Swift is now. I like this a lot. This is amazing. And I just, it flowed so well. I would listen to it nonstop at the gym. In fact, this is one where I didn't listen to a lot of Taylor Swift. I just listened to this album. Kerri can tell you over and over and over and over and over until where Spotify told me that I was one of the top Taylor Swift, fans because I just listened to that album basically nonstop for months. Now I've just been listening to her whole discography for months. But specific songs, just all of them really. I think this one does flow really well. I don't think it's perfect. I think there is some flaws. Like I think Me is it's a little too corny at times, but then it's also times where I listen to it and I go, it's corny, but I think it works. And Kerri actually made me think about this a little bit, where she was like, yeah, Me is corny, but that's Brendan Urie's vibe. That's like what he does. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Every single time that she works with someone else, she like adapts to their style and she like doesn't force them to do something different. And I think that's why a lot of those songs can be really good. I'm not a huge fan of his style. I was back when I was like a early Panic at the Disco fan, but I grew out of that. Or I don't mean to say that as if you're a fan of them now that you need to grow out of it or anything, but I just changed. I like different stuff. But I do actually still really have fun with that song sometimes. But like that's kind of my only hiccup. I think everything else in it is so meaningful. I was talking about telling Kerri like Cornelia Street, like where she's talking about like, that's like a specific thing that I have with this person. And I'm always going to remember that as a part of just being with that person and spending time with them on Cornelia Street. And I have a lot of things like that with Kerri. That is like, Airbnbs that we've been to or places that we've been to together and just experience different things. London Boy, I used to jam to all the time, even though she's no longer with her London Boy. There's The Man. I loved watching the documentary I think Hanna mentioned earlier when she started talking about how she's going to start mentioning politics more and like actually voicing her opinions. And I think she did it a little bit before that, like, having like some like, pro-gay like messaging and things like that. But she really leaned into it in Lover and just like leaned into like love first, love matters, love wins kind of a deal with what is it? Sorry, you guys, you need to calm down. Which has
Mhm.
Fab Five and a lot of other popular like LGBT celebrities in it. I think is really really cool. Um, and I used to Kerri to tell me I used to say stuff like damn, it's 7 a.m. Like you need to calm down, bro. I like to say that all the time. Yeah, and then I love how this ends because I absolutely adore the song Daylight that it ends, and I love when an album just has a really really amazing like final song that just ends with a bang. And I think Daylight really does that for me, especially where it ends with her basically saying what the concept of the album is like you're defined by what you love and stuff like that. And I just always love that message. It kind of makes me want to be more of a Paddington, as Dylan and I used to like to talk about. Be a Paddington, be like somebody that like is positive and helps and stuff like that, and like loves things instead of always bashing on things. Some things are worth bashing on, but I just love the style of Lover. It's the first vinyl that I bought of hers. I love the cover art. I love the clothing associated with it. I love how it's like Reputation is the steer into the dark pop, thing with Taylor, and then Lover is the after New Year's Day, like the now I'm out in the sunshine kind of a deal. And I just think it works so well. And uh, yeah, so that's basically it. And oh, and the style from Reputation bleeds into Lover a lot as well. That's why those are really high for me, because the kind of the rap, a little bit of a rapping, like talking singing that she does a lot of the times. I really really dig that. So anyways, Charles, what do you think about Lover?
Yeah, I really enjoy Lover. I feel like it's kind of in the middle for me. I think I had it at number 6. And Lover, it it's the only album of hers that I haven't really strongly connected to. Um, but I really enjoy a lot of songs on it. But I don't know, it's one of those albums that I just hasn't really connected with me, but I don't have any bad things to say about it. But I also like don't have any like super passionate opinions about it. It feels like the most neutral album for me. But like it also has some really great songs in it. Songs that when they came on in eras, it definitely Lover. I gained a deeper appreciation for it after seeing it in eras like Cruel Summer, Lover, The Archer, Miss Americana, Cornelia Street, You Need to Calm Down. All of those are really just like A tier songs. Um, I just, for some reason, Lover is just not an album that has really resonated with me. I don't really have a good explanation for that other than it could have been at a time, especially since it came out after Reputation, when I just wasn't on the Taylor train anymore for a while. So it could have been that. Um, but yeah, Lover's just it's kind of in the middle for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because Lover's where my train began. So yeah,
Hmm.
albums will hit you different because of that. Carrie, what do you think about Lover?
Yeah, this was my I have to double check if it was my number 7. I say I had a little lower just because I think some of Taylor Swift's very best songs are on this album, but there's also some songs that I just don't really connect with as much. So it just brings it down a little bit lower for me as like an entire album. Chad, I didn't know that you like listened to this for like that much.
Dude, all the
Because
time.
some of these songs I never remembered hearing before I kind of like went through her whole discography. Like I remembered hearing the singles a lot, but I didn't remember hearing, most albums that you play a lot, I like know the entire album pretty well by the time you're through with it. Through your obsession with it. Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say beyond what everyone else had said. There's some absolutely incredible songs on this album, though.
Yeah, Hannah, what do you think about Lover?
Lover, I have ranked 6th, but I love all of the albums, as I say every single time here. But one of the things that I like about Lover is it feels like it's a thesis statement for her career, particularly the song Daylight. kind of like what you were saying, Chad, earlier. I think you were quoting the voice memo, but I would even point out one of the lyrics about how she spent her whole life trying to put it into words. Like she literally, like that's what she's writing about. I just think it's so beautiful. And then there's like this really cool like parallelism there, I guess, with how she uses Lover to start off Eras Tour. And the first thing you hear her singing is "It's been a long time coming," because it's the tour's been a long time coming, but also like the return to live music at that scale post pandemic, when like it feels like it's been forever ago, but it's still recent history. And we didn't know if we would get to have that kind of experience ever again. And I remember being in that stadium just like with goosebumps, like hearing that, like it just was so intense. And it felt the same way in the movie theater too. And so I think that transitions into some of my other points about Lover, which is just how they translate live is just really special. The man didn't connect with me just hearing it on the album, but seeing its staging and I think that just elevated it a ton. There's something really special about being in a group of people screaming, "Shade never made anybody less gay." I think that is probably a healing experience for a lot of people, and it sure made me feel like really good to be like in that moment with other human beings. And then for Cornelia Street, I would point to a different live version, which is the Live from Paris concert that she did after Loverfest got canceled. Because this album, part of I think why a lot of us have maybe less to say or didn't connect as much, in addition to it following Reputation, is because its promotional cycle got interrupted by the pandemic. She was supposed to have something called Loverfest, which was going to be like a multi-day festival where people were going to come to her and like all of her favorite bands were going to like play. And we don't even know like the whole list of what was going to happen because it got canceled so early. And so she did this Live from Paris Lover performance, because Paris is the city of love. And that version of Cornelia Street, like if you feel like that's impactful on the album version, like you have to listen to this live version. It is so good. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Lover, other than also echoing that Cruel Summer just wins for finally getting its due. And I love that St. Vincent helped write that song, because I didn't know that until fairly recently, and that's pretty epic.
Such a brilliant song. I love singing that one, and I love belting "Lover." You're my like all the time. Yeah, I absolutely love that one. Kerri, are we going on to another number? We have another album to talk about first.
We're going on to another number. Dylan, you started with Lover, right?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
All right, so we're going on to our fives, correct?
Yes, fives.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. My 5 is Speak Now. Charles, what are your 5?
Midnights.
Kerri, 5.
My number 5 is also Midnights.
Hanna, 5.
1989.
Dylan, 5.
It was Fearless.
All right. Kerri, we have something to talk about now?
We should talk about Midnights first. 4 of us had said that and have said that now. And then we can also talk about Speak Now and 1989.
Okay. All right. So we'll start with Midnights. I'll go ahead and start now on the cycle. Midnights has grown on me a lot. Of course, it's the newest one, so it's had like the least amount of time to like grow on people and stuff like that. But also, it has the benefit of being the latest album, so it's like the latest, like non-Taylor's version. Well, it is Taylor's version, but non-re-released kind of album. I think it's also like the most mature album. I mean, you got her talking about stuff about like her. Maybe not being the best person, I guess. She's talking about like what she fears about her like family potentially like killing her for her massive wealth. I don't know if that's supposed to be a joke, but it is really funny in the music video when you have like all these comedians coming on, like Mike Birbiglia and stuff. I really love that scene. I think is really, really funny.
I was wondering how you felt considering it's very Chad targeted.
What do you mean?
The guy's name is Chad. They keep going.
That's right.
Chad.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a common thing. Is that Chad is, I don't know, kind of like a douchebag kind of character guy. A lot of the times it's one of those names But I promise, I'm most of the time not that. Maybe sometimes. But yeah, and I also absolutely loved the Bejeweled music video. It's one of my favorite things to watch. I just think I don't know, it just like draws me in. I just love it. I love Laura Dern's in it. Come on now, it's amazing, and I love that song so much. That's one of my favorite songs, probably in my top 10. Is Bejeweled. I think it's just awesome. Yeah, and I think I don't have like a ton to say because I just think it's kind of like a perfect album that like flows. It just flows so well. It has a lot to say. I don't actually have the track listing in front of me, so I should have that so I could actually bring some more things up. Karma's great. You know, she mentions cats in there. Kerri's shirt is a Karma shirt that she's wearing right now with the cat on it. Yeah, I don't know. This is like one of those albums that I feel like is. I'm just waiting for her to write an album that I think is going to end up on like the best albums of all time. And I don't think she's made that album yet. Maybe someone disagrees. I don't know, but I just don't think it's there yet. And so I think this might be one of the closest to that. That's why I have this Kerri at number 4, if I haven't said that. So this is pretty high for me as well. I don't think this really has any flaws. It just flows. It's really good. But I don't think it has the same highs as the other 3 on my in my rank. So that's why I have this at 4. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic. Charles, Midnight.
Yeah, and I realized I got my ranking a little bit wrong. I actually had Lever at 7, Midnight's at 6, and Red at 5. So I was a little bit off on what I'd shared based on what I wrote down here. Midnight's, I really like this album because Radiohead and David Lynch are kind of my skeleton key for understanding things. I'm going to use Radiohead. I'm going to use Radiohead to help you understand how I view this album. I really like Midnight's a lot. Well, what version is that out of the 7 or 19?
It is the Jade Green edition.
Jade Green, nice. For me, the first time I listened to Midnight's, it like fell like a thud. Like I was just like, oh no. Like I was just like obsessed with the production. I mean, I was like kind of bored by the production. I didn't like that there was so much Antonoff. Like it just felt very like muffled. Tons of samples that were like high pitched. But like as I've listened to it more, it is the album that has grown on me the most out of all of her albums. So for me, this album is like Radiohead's King of Limbs, where King of Limbs, the first time people listened to that, it did feel like a thud. It's like a 35-minute album. It's very short. It's very weird. There are no choruses. Taylor Swift doesn't go that extreme with this album, but I do feel like a lot of this felt the first time I listened to it like a retread. It felt like I'm just gonna do Reputation and Lover again. Like I'm back to that era after what I felt was her best like songwriting ever. It was a difficult transition to go back to. I wasn't ready to go back to that Taylor Swift style. But there are a lot of really beautiful songs on this. You're on Your Own Kid, Lavender Haze, Question, Bejeweled, Karma, and Mastermind. Mastermind, I feel like, Hannah, you were talking about Lover being a thesis. I think Mastermind is in a way a new thesis for her because she finds a way to take what is criticized her and reclaim it in a really fascinating way, and that like she literally is a capitalist mastermind, love her or hate her, but she knows how to get you to spend your money willingly without thinking. But she also is acknowledging and commentating on the fact that like everybody thinks Taylor is like this in control of all of these things, but she's just like one person that has a ton of different targets on her back because of her fame and because she's a woman and a bunch of other things. And so for me, I feel like the B-sides to this album are my favorite B-sides. And I really, when I first listened to those, I was like, man, I really wish Taylor Swift went in that direction because I think if she went in with the more rockier, Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, which is such a good song, Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, I think is the best song on this record. And it's not even on the album. And so for me, I listened to that and I'm like, man, I hope the next one is more rocky, or at least I would love to find out what kind of led her to make a song like Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda early on, and then just kind of go in a different direction. So yeah, I really like this album. But I think the only reason I don't have it ranked highly is because I didn't like it the first time I listened to it.
Yeah, great. Well said. Kerri, Midnights.
Yeah, this is was number 5 for me, like pretty solidly in the middle. I I think it's just a great album. It has so many fantastic songs on it. I think it's like a concept album of like, Taylor has said this is like songs like throughout her career. I mean, who's to say how much, but throughout her career, she's kind of like had these songs that about things she's thought about like in the middle of the night or things that have kept you up at night. Um, and it winds up working really well together. And I definitely agree with what you said, Charles. Like the bonus tracks on this album are insane. Like they're so good. And some of them are so sad, like Bigger Than the Whole Sky. That
Yeah.
song's really sad, but it's incredible. You're Losing Me, sad but incredible. Like The Great War, Paris, High Infidelity, and those are just the bonus tracks. And that's in addition to, I think, all of the really, really amazing songs we get on the main album. So it just makes me, and I remember watching this part of the Eras Tour movie and just being really, I don't know, like really captivated by the performance here and the songs here. Some of them I hadn't really heard before. Like I hadn't heard Mastermind before, and just like hearing her sing it, I don't know, something about it's like almost like a story. And that's how I think part of her strength in songwriting is a lot of her songs just feel like a story. But anyways.
Yeah.
Hi, Maggie.
I think
Maggie.
those are
Karma
often,
is a cat purring in my lap.
Yeah.
helps you. Yeah. Those are some of the best ones is when she writes stories. I agree. Hannah, what do you think about Midnights?
I have Midnights as number 2. I'm really excited to talk about Midnights, to the point where I'm not really even sure where to start. But I guess I can say that Midnights was like the album of my winter last year. I remember it coming out and my sister and I being there like at Christmas, listening to it on repeat, like as we're wrapping presents on Christmas. I don't know. It's just I love Midnights. I think that it is the perfect mix of the pop music that we love, but like with the songwriting of Folklore and Evermore. It's like her evolved level of being a pop artist. Um, I think that there's like all of this intertextuality between her songs on Midnights and like her whole prior discography beyond just like through the lyrics, but like through things like the melodies and the instrumentation and the production. There are so many like references to other songs, and it's really fun to try and figure them out. And I think that if you were to go on TikTok and search for that, you would find a bunch of really great examples of people like cutting together bits and pieces of the songs and finding really cool ways to mash them up, because I've seen tons of those videos and they amaze me every time. And every time I see some connection like that, or I notice it myself as I'm listening, it makes me appreciate the album even more deeply, because I think it really rewards super fans, Swifties, people who are like know all the words by heart.
Mhm.
Like the more you know about the Taylor Swift lore, the more you get out of Midnights, and it's really fun. And so I think aside from that, if I can read my notes here, I think everything else I had jotted down has been covered, but I do just also have to shout out You're on Your Own, Kid, because that is one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs. I feel like it speaks to my soul, and it's just like one of those songs that helps you like remember that sometimes like you have everything you need within yourself. And that's one of my favorite things about Dr. Taylor Allison Swift is that she helps you just accept who you are, and that it's okay to love the things you love, and that, as was said in the Time Person of the Year profile, that your interior life matters. Gosh, if you haven't read that profile, like that profile is, as my sister says, one of the great pieces of literature of our time.
Nice.
Up
Yeah.
there with The Great Gatsby.
Yep.
Yeah, I love everything you said, Hannah. I'm not on that level. Maybe I'll get on that level of analyzing her lyrics and stuff like that. I'm getting there, but we'll see one day. Dylan, what do you think about Midnight's?
Yeah, my ranking at number 7 is not because I don't like it. It's just that it is so new also comparatively that like the other 6 I have above it are ones that I've just spent more time with and kind of diving deeper with. So where Midnight's like if we were to rank this a year from now, I think it's going to get up to the 5-4 range. Like I think it'll probably cement itself probably above Lover, Fearless and Evermore, which is I have right above it. But right now it's still 7 because I'm still going through that. I'm kind of between where Charles was at the first time, where I've gotten over the whole like, it was a thud when it came on arrival, but I'm still not at Hannah's level yet either of like dissecting it all the way through. So I'm somewhere in the middle, and TikTok has actually helped me appreciate it more because there's like some great like little dances and stuff. Like the Bejeweled dance is great. It was fun when everyone at the Eras, because I only saw the movie, I didn't see the actual live tour, but it was great when everyone got up and did the Bejeweled dance, TikTok dance during that phrase, which was great. So yeah, it's a really fun album. I really like it. I love the instrumentation specifically, but it's one I just need more time with, but I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think the instrumentation is super mature with that album. That's what it's grown on me a ton. Yeah, so Kerri, are we going to do our 4s now?
No, we can actually talk
yeah.
about because Charles just said his number 5 was actually Red. So we can actually talk about Speak Now, 1989, and Red, and then that leaves one more after this.
Correct. All right.
Dang, let's go.
What was the first one we're talking about?
We could do Speak Now first, I think.
Now. All right, Charles, do you want to start with Speak Now?
Yeah, I got Speak Now at number 3. Speak
Nice.
Now, I think what's really been fascinating is to hear how we all have different ends with Taylor Swift. We all kind of got connected with her at different times, and I think that's one of her strengths as an artist and why her transition to pop was such a good decision. And I think Speak Now is although like Red was really her true transition into pop, I feel like Speak Now, like for instance the Easter eggs that Hannah's talking about, I think Speak Now it was the beginning of that in terms of the text that was happening in the songwriting became just as important as the text of her life itself. I think that album has basically massive songs on it. Dear John and Back to December are like, Dear John is basically the All Too Well before All Too Well. Back to December is this beautiful song where Taylor is in the opposite position, where she is often found the men in, and she's struggling with guilt and remembering this really pleasant, wonderful time with a wolf, like a little while ago. It's a beautiful song, and I feel like those songs are what got the fan base and people obsessed with analyzing, oh, is this song about this? And when she says this about that one time when she's drinking a cheap rosé, is that because she was drinking a cheap rosé on like September 13th, 1990? Like, it's just like this is what started it. Like the Dear John song, when people are like, oh my gosh, John Mayer is an asshole. And now everybody's like, yeah, John Mayer's an asshole. And then back then people are like, oh my gosh, Taylor Lautner is actually like a good guy. And yeah, Taylor Lautner's a good guy. Like, all Speak Now like is responsible for like massive cultural, like pop culture conversations that were happening around her life. And so for that reason, it started a trend that would eventually blow up between 1989 and Reputation. But I also love that it started this. If we didn't have this over-analysis or Easter egg dropping that she started doing, where her life became just as interesting as her songwriting, then I don't think we would have people latching on to Midnight. I think overall, though, the things that I really wanted to discuss about this album is that I feel like the songwriting I really connected with, and I feel like this is her first true masterpiece of an album, like front to back. I think there aren't any bad songs on this, and I feel like it's wonderful that she also kind of started this trend of picking a theme. And each album after this relatively has a theme. I guess you could say Fearless kind of has a theme, but it breaks away from that often at times to kind of be I can't remember the word for it, self-critical at times, so it kind of breaks away from that. But Speak Now is pretty consistent. Every single song is a confession in some way about something that she's kept secret. And then those themes continue on throughout the rest of her career. And so for me, everything great about Taylor Swift, I feel like starts at this album. And so that's why I put it at number 3.
Oh yeah, Kerri, what do you think about Speak Now?
Speak Now, I'm just double checking. Is my number 4. So just out of my top 3, this one definitely moved up a little bit for me. It had for me kind of a lot of the same nostalgia as Fearless, but there were some tracks on like kind of an initial like re-listen for this that I kind of was like, I don't know if I really love this or not. But those tracks have definitely grown on me a lot, and this has just grown to be one of my favorite albums. Yeah, I think the songwriting in this is brilliant. It's kind of cool to see, her with each album, right from debut, she like transitions more and more from country to pop. And this is definitely like a big step in that transition. Like there's definitely some more country songs on here, but there's definitely quite a few that are it's hard to argue that they're country at all. But yeah, this has fantastic songs. I don't know. I don't want to go on and on, but this one has definitely grown on me a lot, and I do think it's just a fantastic album.
Totally. Hannah, what do you think?
I have Speak Now at number 9. It started to grow on me when Taylor's version came out. I thought that the way that she announced it was really cool. I actually watched the Eras concert that day via like a TikTok stream that like had multiple people's like views around the audience. So it was really cool to like watch everything starting to turn purple, and that excitement was pretty hype. I think it's the weakest vault out of all of the vaults, but I do love Electric Touch featuring Fall Out Boy. That is such a fun song. This also has one of those nostalgia bombs and Never Grow Up. Particularly for me, the lyric, memorize what it sounded like when your dad gets home. Like I can just picture being home in my room in my like childhood house and hearing my dad's car door and like knowing it was him, and not having that house anymore, like just makes the song hit like pretty hard. And I think another shout out song for this album is Back to December, and a really fun mashup that is available on Spotify is Back to December and Apologize.
Cool.
So check that out. It's a fun combo. And then, of course, for all of us that like want nothing more than for there to be a Taylor Swift rock album one day, we do get a little bit of that in Haunted. If you make sure your audio settings don't muffle it, if you're listening to Spotify, you can really hear those rock elements a lot better. And
also with Better Than Revenge. So
yeah.
Dylan, what do you think about Speak Now?
Yeah, I also have this in number 9, not because I don't like it, but it's just, when you love 9 albums and like a 10th, it's hard to, to rank them. But I think, some of the country stuff does bog some of it down for me. But I do think, like everyone has said, like this is the first, I think, true glimpse of the Fearless too, but like real theme and, flow and kind of like this overall concept, which I really, really appreciate. It's just none of the songs are particularly like ones that I'm like, oh, I want to go listen to that. Like I always listen to them as an album, but I'm never just like throwing on. I usually throw on songs from other albums first. But Never Grow Up is great, especially with the Taylor's version. The idea of growing up and that she wrote this when she was young and recording it when she's older. I think it's going to be really cool when we see her record Taylor's the debut album for similar reasons. It's just great to hear an older Taylor sing about a younger Taylor from the younger Taylor's perspective when she wrote it. I think that's really cool. So it's one I like, but don't love as much as the other ones above it. That's just all it comes down to.
Yeah. Great thoughts. Speak Now is one that's just been continuously rising in my ranks. I think it used to be lower, and then I love getting to Speak Now when I'm listening just through the discography. I get to Speak Now and I'm like, yes. And it used to be Fearless for me, but then Speak Now like jumped over it, and it's like look at like the construction of Speak Now. It starts with like one of the best bangers ever in mine. Like I can just like I'm like I'm like headbanging to that shit in the car. I'm just like, for the first time, and then like the very last song, Long Live, is one of my all-time favorite songs.
Yeah.
I love that song, and it ends with that song, and it's basically Taylor's David Bowie's Heroes, Long Live, and I just love that. I think it's an anthem, and yeah, so basically it begins and ends fantastically, and I think everything in between just rules. I think the only maybe kind of hiccup, and people might disagree with me, is Mean. And I grew up listening to Mean a lot, but I think like now it's just kind of corny
Kerri's face is great.
a little bit, so yeah, so it's one of those things. Yeah, I don't know. It's like when I'm listening to, I'm like, I'm gonna be in a big city and all you're gonna be is mean, and then I'm like, okay, so like there's mean people in the city, Taylor. Like I don't
You don't need to take
Sounds
it
like
too
you're being
literally,
mean.
Chad.
I'm being
Sounds like
mean.
you're being mean
Okay,
about mean.
right. Anyways, yeah, I just think Speak. I mean, I even really like Mean, so I'm just saying Speak Now like flows so well, and I really like the idea of having one of her earlier albums ranked really highly. So I'm glad this one really spoke to me a lot. Spoke now to me, and so it just really really works for me every time. Yeah, I have this one at 5, but I could totally see it growing on me even more. Yeah, I love Speak Now. Cool. So we're done with that. Red is next, correct?
Yeah, we could do Red.
Okay, Kerri, do you want to start with Red?
Yeah. This is my it's kind of unexpected, but this is my number 1.
Ooh, okay.
That's cool.
I think part of that is by virtue with the Taylor's version of this album. It's basically 2 albums. It's the longest album
Yeah,
she's
2
ever
hours.
put out. And so granted, there are 1 or 2 songs in the full Taylor's version that aren't my favorite, but I think the other songs in Red like more than make up for it, and just so many of my absolute favorite songs of hers are on this album. It just like pushes it up to number 1 for me. I love that this, I feel like she is mostly pop by this point by Red. It is definitely if you're gonna say she crossed over, I would say 1989 is full pop. Speak Now is more country. Red is like truly that transition. I think there's still some very country sounding songs on this album. I think especially once you incorporate in the Taylor's version songs as well, the vault tracks and everything and the bonus tracks. But I don't know. I love this album and how I think she embraces both. In this album, she embraces both the country side of her music and the pop side of her music, and I think they blend so well together. I think some of her best songs are on here. I love, my favorites are on here. I guess I won't mention which one's my favorite, like Chad didn't, so we don't spoil the bracket. But like the 10-minute version of All Too Well, I'm a sucker for it. I love it every time it comes on. I love it. I love the extra verses and the extra bridges in the song. It's absolutely amazing. I don't know. I would say it's hard because I think there is a different album that's maybe more perfect from end to end. But this one, I think, even though it maybe has a couple missteps in there, I think its highs are so high. It just makes it up for me. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Hanna, Red.
Okay, I had Red at number 8. But I really do relate to a lot of what Kerri said, especially about it being a double album, with Taylor's version in particular. I think for me, when Red first came out, I heard the singles and wasn't like that impressed, I guess, at the time. Like I was in my too cool for school, like Neutral Milk Hotel phase, like was I still love them, but like I was kind of like hipster, like, oh, I'm too good for like the popular stuff kind of vibe. So it was a really fun experience for me to listen to Taylor's version and see like just how much breadth the album covers,
Yeah.
even just within the album in terms of like the genre and the tone and the vibe and the style and all of that. Some standouts for me are Nothing New featuring Phoebe Bridgers,
Mhm.
Message in a Bottle, Forever Winter, I Bet You Think About Me, and of course, All Too Well 10-minute version. I had a phase where I was measuring time in All Too Well 10s. I have the sweater with like the scarf, and yeah, so definitely love Red, even though it unfortunately had to fall below some others just because I loved them more.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Nothing New because I every single time Phoebe starts singing, I just get goosebumps, and I'm just like, she's just one of my favorite artists. I love her voice so much, and I just think that song is so Phoebe, but it's also so Taylor. So
Yeah.
that's probably my favorite one. And I know All Too Well 10 Minute is amazing, but I love Nothing New more. It's just one of those things. But yeah, anyways, Dylan, Red.
I love Red. It's my number 2, so it's not my number 1, but it's because of, I think, nostalgia for a different album. But number 2, because I just think it's just packed with so much great stuff. And kind of like what Kerri said, it's like that perfect bridge to where nothing feels too country, nothing feels too pop. It's just a great kind of blending of all genres. I feel like it's probably one of the more accessible albums. Also because I think it works just as well on in studio and on stage, which has been like my thing. Like Reputation's really great on stage, but I don't like listening to it as much, or vice versa for some other albums. But this one I really just think is so like the fun songs, which are kind of like the singles. I was with Hannah too, like agreeing with like the idea that when I heard those singles, I was like, I Knew You Were Trouble, we were never getting back together. Those songs are just, they were so overplayed on the radio. I was like, these are okay. But then when you actually listen to the full album and get into like all the nooks and crannies, that's when it's like, wow, that's amazing. And I liked All Too Well before, but yeah, this masterpiece 10-minute version, it's the quickest 10 minutes in a theater I've ever had, where it ended and I looked at my sister Kelsey and I was like, it's over? That was not 10 minutes. And Kelsey's like, yeah, it was. And I was like, no, that was like 3 minutes. What are you talking about? Because it just, you're so engaged and so drawn into it. I mean, 22 is so fun. It's a great one. When you turn 22, you sing the song. It's like, it's just such a great album, and you also get the Hunger Games songs, which I think are some of my favorite songs ever. Safe and Sound is in my top 3 all-time Taylor Swift songs. So yeah, those Hunger Games songs are so great too, because that's actually kind of like the first little inkling of folklore in there too. It's like, oh, she could do folk songs too, and you're like, oh, I can't wait. It's like a little tease. It's great. Ronan breaks my heart. This whole album
Can't listen to it.
The whole album is so good. Treacherous is amazing. Everything is so good. I even the first song, State of Grace. I think the weakest song in the Red album is probably Red itself, just because
I agree.
But I still like Red. But yeah, it's one of those things where I do not have a song that I skip on it. It's a no skip album. That one, my whole top 3 is like a no skip album, top 3. So I'm very happy to rep it at number 2. I love it.
Yeah, like no skip. That's like when I talk about like an album flowing, I think that's exactly what I mean. I think that's where I rank things too. Red is a very complicated album for me because at one point I had Red at number 10. I was like, this album does not work. And it was kind of like Reputation in that way. But it, unlike Reputation, hasn't grown on me that much, although I do think it's like a phenomenally written album. Like everyone's obsessed with All Too Well. I do think it's a great song. There's a lot of poetry in there. It's just a lot of stuff that's just really great writing, and that might be like the first time where she's starting to have like just a really great like concept, like where you have like and she'll work with Bon Iver later on, who wrote maybe one of the best breakup albums ever with For Emma Forever Ago, and Red is kind of her breakup album. And I love a lot of its construction where you have the we're never ever getting back together, and then right after that it's stay, stay, stay. So it's like you could see how the emotions, it's so complex for her, where she's like, we're done, but maybe you can stay, kind of. I love the placement of that. I do think Red is a very weak song. I think it's it's catchy in a way, but it's also so like kind of like poppy, where I'm just like, all right, this is generic, but still kind of fun. The last time, that's the song that is the one that's the No Body No Crime, where I'm like, all right, this song halts the album. I don't think it's a bad song. I like it, but I also like kind of want to skip it a lot of the time. I think like that would actually make the album better if that wasn't on there. But also I just have some issues where I have a problem because, all right, yeah, the elephant in the room. Jake Gyllenhaal is one of my favorite actors of all time. So I know this album is mostly, if not all, about him, especially All Too Well, and that's why I have a lot of issues with it, because it feels so like it paints him, I think, in a negative light, but also in a positive light too, because the album's so complex. But I also feel like it's mostly just, and Dylan, I'll let you respond to any of this if you want. But it's just it's a thing where I'm like, it feels really immature of her because it's all so from like the one perspective of one person. And then I've heard her in interviews be like, oh well, they're like, well, what does the guy have to say about this? And she's like, it doesn't matter what they have to say about it. And I'm like, it kind of does, because you're like dragging someone through the mud, and then no one's on the other side has anything to say about it. And so I have kind of issues with that a little bit, although you can still apply a lot of the themes from the album to any relationship. So it's not about that. So I might have a little bit of weird personal bias with it, although if I can throw that aside, Red has been growing up in my ranking. So it was at 10, now it's at 8, but I could see it getting higher because I do think it's a really, great concept breakup album. And I can see that. And it's only recently that I've been able to see that more and more. So I think it's going to grow on me a lot. I think it's great that Dylan has it a lot higher because I do think it deserves some respect. Dylan, go ahead.
I don't have anything to respond to with the Jake Gyllenhaal stuff. It's like,
Okay.
he's doing fine is the way I look at it. It's like he doesn't need, this, defense. He's like, whatever. And I think that's the same with John Mayer. Like, I love John Mayer as an artist. I think his music is like totally my jam. He's one of my favorite artists, but like he's an asshole and I can admit it. So like I get where she's coming from. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I do want to very quickly respond. I'll say this is Taylor Swift's art, and I think she's not out there, and she's actually fairly respectful. She does not outright say most of the time like who her songs are about. You can very much tell. It's very obvious, but she does have that level of respect for, I think, most of her, most people she's written songs about. She's usually pretty on the down low about. She won't come out right and say it like, oh, all these songs are about Jake Gyllenhaal and he's a total asshole. She's not like that. I think she has a right to express her emotions into writing songs and songwritings. And Jake Gyllenhaal has actually taken a very mature approach to this, I think, which is to say in interviews, he's been like, she writes her songs based on what she wants to, and it's really not my business. And he has been publicly documented as being a little bit of a jerk sometimes.
We can all be jerks at different times.
Yeah, exactly. It's very true. I can't imagine like that level of fame and having to deal with some things.
But in my quick defense, because I brought it up, I was never saying that Taylor should never have written this album, and this was very disrespectful, and she should throw it away. I have the album. We just bought the album because I do think she has the right, but it's also my right to not rank it as highly because I have a little bit of an issue with that. But I think it's something that I can get over with, because I do think that it's, at the end, it's art. So it's not like she's, it's not like she's slamming somebody and putting their name into it and all this stuff. But I do think with later stuff, like with the song Happiness, is a song that I love because she talks about the relationship and she says, he hurt me, but I hurt him. And I think because maybe, it is a little bit of an age thing. She got older. I think she got more mature and started to think about these things like, It's not just one person that ruins a relationship. Most of the time it's two. So
Yeah, and that's why 22 is such an important song, because it shows the date. It like dates the album. It almost feels like a period piece in that way, because it says, I'm 22, so take that for what it's worth, and now here's my story.
That's a great point, Dylan. I never actually thought about that. I really like that point, and it's fun because I'm 3 months younger than Taylor Swift, so I was 22, I think, when this album came out. So yeah, Charles, what do you think about Red?
Yeah, I really enjoy this album. I have it at 5. I feel like I agree with everybody in that it's like the early transition to pop here. I feel like it still holds up really well. I think I first realized, because Red used to be in my top 3, but I first realized Red fell when I saw it live, and that like it was great live, and All Too Well was great live. But I remember after it was done, I find myself like after the concert thinking more about some of the other set lists than the others. But so Red kind of started to fall after that. I will say it had some of my favorite songs, 22, Stay, 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 All Too Well, but also Begin Again is a really beautiful song. And that's just a wonderful closer of an album, of a song. I feel like her voice is starting to mature on this album. She's starting to become a more powerful singer, or at least a more solid singer. And I would have it higher, but I just feel like everything that this album does well, 1989 just does better. And to comment on the Jake Gyllenhaal stuff, like I'm in a complete agreement that like I think I actually think like Taylor could have been a lot harder on Jake Gyllenhaal in that movie, and I think in a lot of cases she could be a lot harder. And I think I first realized that when all of the songs from the Vault track for 1989 were slamming Harry Styles.
Yeah.
Like Harry looks like a psychopath, like in those songs. And so for me, when I listened to that, I was just like, Jesus, if those were put on the main album in 1989, there would have been a whole culture war. And because she saved those songs for like a decade later, now like she can kind of duck away from all the One Direction and Harry Styles fans, because they're gone now. Like, I mean, they're still around, but like One Direction is dead at this point and Harry Styles is doing his thing. And so I just feel like Jake Gyllenhaal, I do agree that Jake Gyllenhaal out of all the exes probably gets the most negative energy consistently to this day.
Yeah.
I don't know how like morally good that is. I don't know how morally good it is that Taylor first spoke up against kind of the fan harassment and death threats after John Mayer was getting threatened, but not after Jake Gyllenhaal was getting threatened. Like, I don't know what that has to say about things, but I can acknowledge that Jake Gyllenhaal, yeah, he got slammed pretty hard, but I think it's Taylor's right to do that too. I think it's a beautiful song, and I think I love the nuance portrayal of people, and so for me, it doesn't make me dislike Jake Gyllenhaal. It just makes me understand him more. Of course, the dude that like acts his ass off in Nightcrawler is possibly a little bit of an asshole in real life. Like, I totally get why he didn't go to her birthday party. I totally get it from his perspective. He was probably like, "Oh, I gotta like prepare for my next role, man." Like, whatever Jake says, I don't know. So I get it from his perspective, but I also, the beauty of it is I understand Taylor's, and I think after listening to that song, it's hard to say like, Jake, why didn't you go to the birthday party? Come on, she was turning 22.
One of
You
those
can't miss your girlfriend's birthday party. Come on, man.
Yeah, yeah, low blow, Jake. Come on now.
One of those things in the actual album that I think about now, in regards to Jake Gyllenhaal, is when she says, listen to some indie record that's much cooler than mine. I'm like, what does Jake listen to? I'm just so interested to want to know what album that is, but I don't think I'll ever know unless I get to meet Taylor, and that's maybe the one question I'll ask her. What was that album? Or maybe if I ever can meet Jake and he isn't, then I'll ask him that. But yeah, Kerri, what do you think about Red?
I started, so we can move on to
One last thing. I'm trying to do the math to see what role Jake was probably preparing for, and it looks like it was source code. So was source code worth it? That's the question.
Yes, because
It's a good movie, but
very
great.
underrated sci-fi movie.
I don't like that movie.
But is it worth it to do that? To miss a birthday party?
You got to go to that birthday party. Come on.
I think it's worth it. We're on to 1989, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we are.
Kerri, I believe you're starting with that, right?
No, Hannah can start.
Hannah.
I started Red.
1989.
Well, I'm excited to start this one. even though I only ranked it 5, but I'm really obsessed with it in this moment. It
Mhm.
it definitely was one of the first ones to like really like permeate my reality because like those singles, those music videos, like how could you not see those and like love them? Those music videos were iconic. But I never really listened beyond those songs until I was preparing for Taylor's version to come out. And I'm like, fine, I'll listen to this whole album. And then I was like, whoa, no wonder everyone thinks this is a perfect pop album. And then Taylor's
Yeah.
version came out and it was elevated even further. Like the vocals, like the runs that she does with her voice and like the growling and the like, I can't even attempt to mimic it like if I'm singing in the shower. Like she is just so impressive with her vocals. And I think I guess it kind of makes sense because it came right after Speak Now and she had sung Mean and, talked about, people making fun of her because she can't sing. And like clearly she worked really hard on her voice and took things to the next level for 1989, which nothing showcases that better than 1989 World Tour, which is available on YouTube, and it's 2 hours and 11 minutes, and it's a really good way to spend 2 hours and 11 minutes of your life. Everyone who wants a Taylor Swift rock album, you basically get it from that live show, especially the second half of it. It is like epic. I was flabbergasted. I was shook. I need to watch it again. I immediately went to see if it was on Spotify for me to listen to every day of my life, and it's not. So by the time I'm going to watch it a second time because I'm going to make Charles watch it with me. And I like it so much that it might actually end up shifting 1989 up for me in the rankings, like further into the future, which is also benefited by how these vault tracks are the best of all of the vault tracks, in my opinion. I love them. I start my day like in the shower playing these on my shower speaker. I just start with Slut and go from there. And it just like amps me up. Not like Now That We Don't Talk is such a vibe. It has all of the things I love about the song's style, but like makes it like more high stakes and it just keeps escalating and escalating. And I guess the last thing I would say about 1989 is just like another tidbit about the criticism from earlier about inclusivity and the people that she brings out on stage. Because another thing I remembered is in 1989 Taylor's version liner notes, she shares a lot about how this girl squad she was surrounding herself with at the time was like her first time really experiencing having a large group of female friends, which does harken back to that Mastermind lyric of nobody wanted to play with me as a little kid. And it also was like an intentional effort on her part to discourage the media from speculating about her dating life because she was so tired of everyone always talking about, oh, what man is she with now? And she was like, fine, I'm not going to be with any man. I'm just going to be with women. And then they started speculating that she's gay. And so, anyway, all of this comes out in those liner notes. And I think it's really helpful context with which to look at the album.
That's one of my favorite parts of Bejeweled. It was like I could still say I don't remember. Dylan. I know he's going to talk a lot.
That's my number one.
1989.
Yeah, no, Chad knows this is my favorite. Not my favorite album of all time. One of my favorite pop albums of all time. But it is one of those albums that just It's another no skip album for me. But I think a lot of people, like the general perception, is kind of revolving around the singles, which is also I think the issue with Red is a lot of people hear the singles and they're like, oh god, we hear Shake It Off all the time, Blank Space, Style, those 3 songs
Mhm.
they just play all the time. If those are the only 3 songs you hear, then yeah, you are warranted that opinion. But I think when you actually listen to the album in its grander scheme, there's just so much going on that just goes beyond the
Mhm.
generic pop bubble I think so many people put it in. It's kind of like the blockbuster album of her, repertoire, to where like sometimes you'll have like, if we're comparing this to movies, because originally this started as a movie show, and it's like, if we're looking at like these indie films of the year, that's your Folklore and Evermore. You've got some a first feature maybe, which is your Fearless or your Taylor Swift. But then sometimes you just have to give it to the big blockbuster. Like 1996 they had to get, or 7 they had to give it to Titanic. Lord of the Rings, you had to give it to that. It almost feels like that album for her, where it's like, no, like this is big, it's very broad, it's very poppy, but it's it's great. It works. Everything is so well done, especially with the Taylor's version. I love so many of the re-instrumentations of everything. I'm still on the fence of the whole, is the original style better than the new style? I'm still trying to figure it out. That's the one
Yeah.
where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. That's the only song that detracts from me, but style was never my favorite anyway, because I think so many people look toward the singles but don't look deeper. And I think Wildest Dreams is, spoiler alert, my favorite Taylor Swift song. It's on the album here. I love New Romantics is so fun because it is all about falling in love. There's not a lot of breakup in it. Yes, they save it for the vault songs, which, that's the naughty stuff, but the general album is very much more about falling in love and young love. And I came to this album when I was a junior in high school. I was in my first ever relationship, so it was like our album. And we have since broken up, and we still are friends, but it just brings me back to that time of like I was falling in love for the first time when this album came out, which was all about young love. And Blank Space Baby, I'll Write Your Name, Where Are We Out of the Woods, Wildest Dreams, How You Get the Girl, New Romantic, Shake It Off, all these fun, just lovely songs about love and fun and just being young and having no cares in the world and just enjoying your time being young and embracing youth. And I love it. I think Lover is a like more refined version of this, where it's like a little bit more like, oh, we're at the engagement phase, but this is more like the, oh, like we're dating and we're having fun kind of era. And I just love that. It just brings back so many good personal memories as well. I love the Kendrick Lamar inclusion as well in this album. Yeah, I know Chad's a big fan as well of him. So it's like, it's really great to just see all the different shades she brings to this album while still feeling like it all belongs together. Like, I don't think there's like a song that feels out of place because everything has the same kind of through line and tone, which I really, really like. So it's amazing. And, I'm a New Yorker, so Welcome to New York being the first album or first song doesn't hurt. It's what I play every time I go because my family's in Jersey. So every time I take the train back from Jersey to New York, I play it when I'm about to go in the Lincoln Tunnel, and then I come out of the Lincoln Tunnel and we're at the first chorus. Welcome to New York. It's a thing. I love it. It's amazing. I really have nothing else but good things to say about it. So
Hell yeah. The lights are bright, but they never blind Dylan.
that's right.
And he also let us know in on one of his little Cornelia streets, the time he listened in high school in 1989 with a former girlfriend.
Yeah, Katie, if you're listening, we're buds. She's great, and like it was our album. Like that was like, and I had an acapella group. We did a whole Taylor Swift 1989 medley. Like that album just means so much to me, and like my growing up. It reminds me of my first love and just learning what love was. So that's why it's so meaningful. Yeah.
So beautiful. Yeah. I don't have like a lot of negative things to say about 1989. And there's just some hangups with me where I just remember the time of Shake It Off. That was like the big song. You two guys talk about like Midnights having so many memes and stuff and whatnot. And Shake It Off being like the thing that everybody was playing. Like, was it TikToks then, where it's like everybody with the dancing babies and family, the Shake It Off and stuff.
Meme
and I'm
culture.
like, I'm just like, okay. And then, so when we talk about like something being so poppy and overplayed, a lot of that is 1989 for me, where I'm like, I get to Shake It Off. And that's a skip song a lot of the time for me now, where I'm like, maybe it'll have a reawakening for me later when I'm like, I haven't heard this album in such a long time. It comes back on me. But right now I'm just like in the moment where, because I ranked this number 9. It feels weird, I know, because a lot of people have nothing but great things to say about it, like Dylan. And I don't hate the album. I really like it, but it's just one of those where I'm just like, and when I look at it, I see a lot of songs that I do actually like, but then I see some that I just think are so bland and like, and I know Kerri is going to be annoyed, but Blank Space, I think, is so bland and basic. Shake It Off, I think, is super generic, like I said. Maybe that's about it, because and I don't really love Out of the Woods all that much, but I do actually really like Style. So, Dylan said that was his least favorite. I actually really like that one. That's
not my least favorite. It's just, I was talking about the singles in general. Like, you just got to look deeper than the singles. It was an example I used. It's not my least favorite. I like Style.
Yeah, and I actually do think what Dylan was saying, like a lot of the ones that aren't singles, I do think actually make the album a lot better, like make it a really good album. I love it ending on Clean. I think that's a really good song. And yeah, as I think Charles mentioned, Begin Again is one of my favorite songs. So that makes Red really amplify. Like that's kind of my All Too Well is Begin Again. I think that's the best song on that album. I love the intro, Welcome to New York. There's some times where I'm like, yeah, Welcome to New York feels kind of basic as well. And then it's other times when I'm just like jamming to that. I don't think it's as much of a banger as like Mine is, but I do think it's up there. And then I'm like, I kind of want to go to New York and then and do the Lincoln Tunnel thing that Dylan's talking about. It's maybe an underrated experience here. But it's just one of those where I think 1989 might grow on me more and more. But I think in Bad Blood, that's another one that I'm like, it's kind of basic and stuff. But a lot of the ones in between those, I do like How You Get the Girl. I love, and I love that Dylan shouted out Wildest Dreams as his favorite because I think that's a super great song as well. There's a lot, and All You Had to Do Was Stay is another one of my favorites.
I just have
really great ones that I love, but.
One last thing to add about the singles. I was almost on your wavelength too, Chad, of like Shake It Off is so annoying at this point. It was my Let It Go of that year where I was like, all right, I've heard it so much. I never want to hear it again. But something about like when we were in the movie theater, the Eras movie, and it played, everyone got to their feet. It's just like this weird hypnotism thing it has on me where I'm like, I always say I'm sick of it, but then when it plays, I'm like, I'm dancing, I'm having fun. So it's weird. It's got a weird hypnosis.
I will say when she played like stuff like that, even if I didn't like love the song like on the album, like necessarily when I'm listening to it, I could skip over it. If she played it live in the Eras tour, I loved it because I love it's in my top 10 of the year of movies. I love the Eras tour. It's so great. If you haven't seen it, hopefully she'll release a 4K of it because I really want to watch that over and over and over again. Charles, 1989.
Yeah, I really love this album. I have it at number 4 for me. I think it's one of the most interesting periods in her life as an artist. I feel like she really grew in her understanding and became a little bit more, started to become a little bit more experimental here with this album. I feel like, did a great kind of like new wavy-esque kind of song with New Romantics, which is such a good song. Style is like a great stadium song, and she would later go on to become like create so many stadium songs after this. I feel like I understand what you're saying about Blank Space, Chad, but for me, I think for why I still really enjoy it is because it's the deconstruction of romantic tropes, and it's the deconstruction of like how romantic relationships are normally portrayed on TV and on movies and in music videos. It felt like it was a very kind of a commentary on the style of music and the style of songs about that came before. And so I took a lot of the extremeness as kind of tongue in cheek, and that's kind of what helps me appreciate that album or that song even more. I think it's one of her most consistent records, and the re-release really cemented this for me, how much I loved it. I do think, thinking of this album, I think it's important to think about other albums that came out around this time too. Carly Rae Jepsen's Emotion and M83's Hurry Up You're Dreaming. If you listen to those two albums and this one back to back, you're going to start to understand that like the three of those people were like, they knew what was coming. They knew that 80s were coming back in style. They knew that new wave was starting to emerge again. They knew that electronic, like synthy songs were starting to come back. And for me, I do think I don't quite think it's as good as Carly Rae's Emotion or M83's Hurry Up You're Dreaming. But like I think it says a lot about her as an artist that she was there making that same style of music in her own way in the same year. I think that's really impressive, and it goes to show that like Taylor Swift was really experimenting with different styles pretty early on, and not just like in the Lover folklore era.
And one more thing to add from what Charles was saying, a Blank Space. At the very end, I think of the original, she has like the memos, and one is her just showing her like writing Blank Space, and I was like, shit, that acoustic version of Blank Space is really really good. And then I'm like, they had to popify it for some reason. Okay. Then the other thing too is I didn't mention is my whole hang up with Kendrick Lamar. I love how he comes back on the album for what was it, Bad Blood, because his rap in it is really growing on me, and I think it's elevating that song for me, at least that version. But this beat to Pimp a Butterfly, which I think is one of the greatest albums of all time at the Grammys. And so like that, I think is another thing that has kind of made me sour on the album, but it's not the album's fault. It's the Grammys fault, but it's one of those things to where, I don't know, there's certain Oscar experiences where you're like, you'll hate Shakespeare in Love because it beat Saving Private Ryan, kind of a deal. So I think that's, for me, that's what that is as well.
Or The Thin Red Line.
The Thin Red
Chad,
Line is better than both of those movies. I agree.
do you mind if I respond to that real quick, Chad? Because I think that's a really interesting point that you just made
Sure.
Yeah.
about how you feel about this album going up against A Pimp a Butterfly, almost like tarnishing it for you a little bit. It's
Mhm.
just interesting because I feel it's a parallel with the situation where Kanye took her mic and, and then how did she describe it? Fully manufactured frame job with a little legal phone call. I don't know. Her words in the Time article were hilarious. But um, that was a situation where she was up against somebody and it was not handled with grace. And then this is, very much the opposite. And he even featured on her album and came back for it with Taylor's version, which I think is confirmation there's no bad blood between the two of them.
Oh,
And
definitely.
I just think it's beautiful. And it also aligns with how
Good
she
point.
and Beyonce supported each other this summer and by going to each other's movie premieres, even though all of the media was determined to pit them against each other. So
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I'm glad that there's no bad blood between the artists, but I don't know. It's a hang up that I can't get over, but I still like the album despite it a lot. So yeah, Kerri, what do you think about 1989?
Yeah, and well, I'll just expand on, and I know how you feel, Chad. It kind of taints it for you, but it's also like Taylor has honestly probably, I mean, she has a little bit to do, I'm sure, with her team promoting her and applying for awards, but it's not her fault if the Grammys, are inherently racist and
Yeah.
but
It is.
anyways, 1989, I think, yeah, it's a perfect pop album. This was my number one actually for a very long time. Just the more I listened to other albums, though, it kind of just kept falling a little bit in my rankings. The more I've listened to the singles on this one, the less I've loved them. And I think, like you guys have been saying a little bit, like the tracks now that were not singles on this album have really surpassed most of the singles for me.
Yeah.
Like, my favorite tracks on this album now are like Welcome to New York and Clean and You Are in Love and like the vault tracks.
You Are in Love.
Yeah. It's really it's like dramatically shifted. Like, we sent, I think for our bracket, we sent Dylan our like top 2 songs for each album to make sure they were included in the bracket. And mine at the time were Blank Space and Style, and now they would be completely different songs at this point, which is really cool. I think this is just like a brilliant album that she put out, and it's really the point where she, I think, started to make fun of her own self in public, like kind of like the Shake It Off, the lyrics to Shake It Off and the Shake It Off video. And she kind of acknowledges how people see her and how she, what the comments that the media makes about her and things like that. So I think that's kind of this album, a little bit of like, I think Hanna said, was talking about how goofy she is. I think this is where her really goofy personality like really starts to shine through a lot more in her lyrics.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Hanna, you haven't spoken. Yeah, 1989, Hanna.
I started 1989.
You did. That's right. Never mind. All right. So what are we, Kerri? We have one more
left.
album, right?
Yeah, I guess we should, maybe we can go through, like, because we never actually went through our 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. Maybe we can go through that really quick and then talk about the last album.
Absolutely. All right. So my 4 is Midnight. Charles, 4.
My 4 was 1989.
Kerri, 4.
My 4 was Speak Now.
Hanna, 4.
Evermore.
Dylan, 4.
Lover.
All right. Kerri, there you go. And my 3 is Reputation, is my number 3.
Speak now for me.
Kerri, 3.
My 3 is Folklore.
Okay. Hannah, 3.
Reputation.
Nice. Dylan, 3.
My 3 is also Folklore.
Nice. Okay. There's
Oh,
your
hold on. 1 second. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I have the. Okay, go ahead. I have the.
All right. My 2 is Lover. Charles, 2.
Evermore.
Kerri, 2.
My 2 is Fearless.
Hannah, 2.
Midnights.
Dylan, 2.
Red.
Nice. My number 1 is Folklore. Charles, number 1.
Folklore.
Kerri, number 1.
Red.
Wow. Okay. Hannah, number 1.
Folklore.
Dylan, number 1.
1989.
That's right. All right. Well, there's our ranking numbers, and we have one more album to talk about. It is Folklore. Let's have Dylan start with Folklore.
Yeah, I had this. I mean, our lowest is number 3 between the 5 of us, so like this is obviously the number 1 averaged out. But I'm glad I'm talking about it first because I know it's higher on 3 of your lists than mine. But I love it. It's amazing. It's her best songwriting for sure. It's just I think about actually when I saw the movie is when I put it down a peg below Red, only because I was in a and this is probably different if you're actually live in the setting of the room, but like for me it was like the other songs just played a little bit better live, whereas this one plays better in studio on ears. But I mean that's like a very nitpicky thing when I was just doing my 1 2 3. It was like I think 1989 I can enjoy in the car, in the headphones, and on stage, whereas this one it's like I really need to be in the right setting and like just really soak it in because it is a very like intellectual, very complex album. It's not like, oh, just like throw on that bop and bop along to it. There are some that are like that, but that's probably why it's a little lower. But I think that's one of its strengths too, is that it's so intricate. And I mean, just the fact that you have that whole love triangle and those 3 different songs kind of covering that story with Betty and Cardigan and August. It's like, that's just such a fascinating thing. And I loved that whole era when people were trying to figure out what all that meant and stuff. And like, oh wait, who's into who? What's this perspective? Is Taylor gay? That's always a question that people would, bring into it too. But like, just the idea of just all these different intertwining stories and just the vibes, it's just so consistent with its vibes. It's amazing. It's so good. And Exile is one of the best songs ever made. So
yeah. I'm glad you shouted out Exile because that one, oh my God, I just love that like booming Bon Iver voice in Exile. And stuff. The way it starts out, like you think it might be Taylor. It's Bon Iver that starts that song, and I just think it's so incredible. That album, I think, is freaking perfect. Like if there's an album of Taylor's that could be considered, I think, to be one of the greatest of all time, I would say it's Folklore, in my opinion. I think Dylan would probably say 1989, but these are our ones. But it's one of the, and Kerri Red. But I think all of these in their own way are phenomenal. But like Folklore to me is just my style the most, because I had always, like I said when I was talking about Evermore, I'd always wanted to see what it would sound like if Taylor just went full like folksy, like indie folk. I can't remember. Kerri might remember. I can't remember which song it was, and it might either be on Folklore or Evermore. But it's one that I was like, that's Taylor basically impersonating Joni Mitchell right now. And then there's songs that, like I said, if Invisible String is basically a Sufjan Stevens song, just Taylor wrote it, kind of a deal. I could see her maybe listening to Sufjan, getting a little bit of influence and writing it. And, that's not a detractor saying like, she copied Sufjan or anything like that. I think it's full on Taylor, just like, it sounds like things that I already love. And so now Taylor doing it makes me love her and makes me love this album so much. I think this album flows so well. Every single time, like I go, every song of this, I think hits and carries the same kind of tone. Mirror Ball feels like a dream pop kind of thing, like a beach house kind of a deal, and it's just really, really cool. The One, I think, is like one of the best songs she ever wrote. I love the idea of you could have been the one, kind of a thing. 7 August. This Is Me Trying. Invisible String, I already said. Mad Woman, Betty. I can't name a song on here and it's not amazing. Exile, The Last Great American Dynasty, Cardigan. They're all just perfect and they flow so well. It's just one that I've just been waiting for her to write, and she wrote it. Now I'm like, I have it. Cool. Okay. And yeah, so when I'm going through all this, I'm just like, I can't put anything above Folklore. It just wouldn't make sense to me, because this is, I think, the style is always waiting for her to do, and she did it. So, yeah, Folklore, I love so much. Yeah, Charles, what do you think about Folklore? Can you guys hear Charles?
Charles, you're muted.
Okay. No, I still can't hear you, Charles.
God.
He's not muted.
Hello?
There you
There
go.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in agreement with you, Chad. I feel like almost 99% certain this is going to be an album that's going to be remembered for a very long time, and it's going to be considered one of the greatest. When I think of some of the greatest albums of all time, To Pimp a Butterfly is definitely one of them. Kid A, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Cross Band, Nevermind. A lot of the albums that are considered the best of the best are either emblematic of their time, where you could listen to that and almost like capture an entire decade in that album, or their concept album that tell some kind of self-contained story or feeling that you can listen to at any point and get into. And Folklore is that style of album. I think at this point, I think Folklore can be analyzed on a rhetorical level, it can be analyzed on a literature level. I think a lot of the songs reference Emily Dickinson poetry, and other poets, and I think Folklore is good enough to rise to that level of Emily Dickinson in a lot of ways. The ideas and emotions she expresses are complicated. She writes from different perspectives constantly. She makes up fictional characters and has them intercross with each other. And I think it's something that will be looked on for many years to come. Like that, this is her best and one of the best albums ever made. Some of my favorites: Mirrorball. I agree that it's dream pop, very beach house. Exile is very chill inducing. Cardigan is has so many perfect one liners. I think this album shows that Taylor can be more powerful, at least in my opinion, as a songwriter, when she tells the truth through fiction. I do think it's interesting sometimes to hear songs about her personal life, but I don't find it as powerful as a lot of the fan base feels, to like find out that like, oh my gosh, she wrote a song about that one picture when she was on that boat going back from that one yacht and she like looked really sad. We finally have that song about that picture, y'all. Like I'm like all right, yeah, that's great. But for me, the thing that's really powerful is the truths that Taylor is still expressing her emotions, but through different characters. I find that not only more inclusive and accessible, but I find that universally relatable. And I think that's when she's the most powerful. We can, instead of analyzing her life to death like a lot of people do today for good and bad reasons, we can analyze the characters, the story, the actions, the emotions. When you read The Great Gatsby, you are not leaving that being like, oh my God, F. Scott and Zelda were crazy. Like this must have been like definitely about them. No, like the story's good enough that you just focus on the story and you focus on, yeah, I can feel a little bit of F. Scott's emotion when this happens with Gatsby, or I can really feel Zelda's emotion when this happens with Daisy later. But the characters, the names are changed, and I think that's when Taylor is really wonderful. I think I think what was the other thing that I wanted to say? Oh, I would like it if she returned to this in the future. I think
Yeah,
her songwriting is best when she's with a producer that makes different music than her. And I would argue that Jack Antonoff, love him, Bleachers at this point, and Jack Antonoff sounds exactly like Taylor. And I love the songs and albums that Jack Antonoff does, but she's better when she's pushing herself out of her comfort zone and she's combining with a new producer. So I don't know, maybe hook up with Radiohead's producer, or
Ew.
maybe hook up with the National again. I don't know. They're just keep broadening her horizons and maybe finally make that rock album.
Yeah, I love a lot of things you said. I just want to touch on because I do think like Betty has like a really great story in it. And I think that stuff like that, like with her writing, like fictional stories and her directing her own music videos, I can't wait to see whatever in her All Too Well short film. I can't wait to see the movie that she directs when she decides that
Oh
she
yeah.
wants to actually be direct. She had a whole conversation with Martin McDonough about, the last movie he made. What was it? And
Banshees. Yeah.
yeah, Banshees. You can tell she's interested, so I'm excited to see that. But also, I wanted to touch on real quick the last Great American Dynasty. I just love the storytelling in that, but it's not like wholly fiction because it's about like an American socialite whose former house she now owns and is renovating and stuff. I think that's a lot of like really cool stuff there as well, and she
Mhm.
compares herself to that great socialite and stuff because she is. So I think there's a lot there with folklore. That's why I loved hearing Charles's thoughts because he always brings some great like analysis to it, and that makes me like the album even more. So Kerri, folklore.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what you guys have said, and this is probably. I mean, I think objectively, like I ranked a little bit on my heart, a little bit more, but I think objectively, this is probably her best album. And it it's so cool that she made this, and it was kind of a departure from the direction she had been going up until that point. It had been very much a move from country to pop, and then this is like almost like a complete departure. There's definitely lots of pop elements in this, but it is a much more toned down, slower, more acoustic vibe. Um, the songs on here are absolutely phenomenal. I yeah, I think I love every single one of them. There's not a bad song on this album. There's not. I'll say the only time is sometimes I skip like Epiphany. I think like just because it makes me sad. Sometimes I'll skip the sadder songs. Um, but yeah, and I rank this 3 just because I'd say with Fearless and Red, there's a little bit more like, I'll fully like belt out those songs. And I guess I just tend to like the little bit of pop a little bit more. But yeah, Folklore is absolutely perfect. These songs are just incredible.
Absolutely, Hannah, folklore.
Well, I agree with so much of what has already been said here. So to avoid repeating some things, let me see if I can narrow down these notes. I would just add that some of my favorite songs on Folklore are the ones like Epiphany and Peace and Hoax, like the ones that are kind of weirder, especially like with their rhythm and like I think because for a long time that was kind of the music I liked the most. Things that like were like less mainstream and more unique. I like the sounds that were in here like just created some really cool song structures that are just fun to listen to. And then I don't know if you guys have heard this, but like she's described her writing style as like sometimes she'll write with a quill pen or a gel pen or like a glitter pen. Like she like for different types of vibes. Like Lover is really like a glitter gel pen and Folklore and Evermore are very quill pen. And I think I gravitate towards the quill pen songs the most.
You would.
But
You would.
Taylor Swift has opened up for me like a love and appreciation for the glitter gel pen stuff too, and I love that for her and for me, like from her, and I wouldn't have gotten that if Folklore hadn't first opened that door. So just eternally grateful for Folklore for turning me into a Swiftie. And I guess one last shout out since I've watched all the side parallel movies here is if you like Folklore, watch Long Pond Studio sessions on Disney Plus because you get little commentary after each song giving you more insight into her thought process, songwriting process, and all of that.
Yeah, I've been meaning to like that and the Miss Americana on Netflix. I think are really good. I'm excited to watch the Long Pond, but yeah, like Lover and then Lover is the one that like made me go oh, and then I think Folklore is the one that sealed the deal and that's why it's my 1 and 2 personally. But yeah, that's great. We made it through all the albums. We some of us are older time Swifties, some of us are newer ones. But we're all big fans now. I think the Eras tour is something that was a catalyst for that, and I can't wait to watch that even more and just keep listening to her albums. Kerri and I have just been like on a loop, car rides, just listening to her nonstop, just having a blast. Our child Elliot will sometimes have to go get shots, and we will. As much as I slammed this song, we play "Mean" for him from Speak Now, and he quiets, and he not quiets somebody. He soothes him. It has a lot of real life advantages being a Swiftie. But yeah, thank you guys so much for this. This has been really great. And wait, Kerri, do you have a ranking for us for the whole panel?
Oh yeah.
Yes. And I'll say, besides our clear last ranked and our clear first ranked, everything else was it was very, very close. Like,
oh wow.
I do this by adding up the rankings, and like the numbers are all, it's like 30, 31, 29, 20. It's like all in a row.
Do you have any ties?
Very close. What?
Any ties?
One tie. Only one tie though.
Start at number 9 then.
So I'm gonna start at number 9. Number 9, Taylor Swift. Number 8, Reputation. Number 7, Speak Now. Number 6, Fearless. Number 5, Evermore. Number 4, Lover. Number 3, 1989. Number 2, Red and Midnights. And number 1, Folklore.
That tracks.
Good list.
It's a good list.
I don't think anybody's really upset about that, except for maybe me and Hannah, because Reputation's super low. But
I bombed Reputation in the ranking.
And you somehow propelled Midnights to number 2 by doing that. Like, I love Midnights, but I was shocked by that one.
Yeah. So that's a pretty great ranking. We don't really have much else to talk about. Go listen to more Taylor Swift. Maybe we'll do this again and later and see where our thoughts are down the line when she releases new albums. Maybe we could do something like that. But yeah, Dylan, please go ahead and plug the song bracket on your channel.
Yes. So my channel, Dill Pickle Movie Network, lots of fun things there. Chad's on there, Kerri's on there all the time. But yes, I believe you're posting this earlier on Wednesday, right? So we can plug it for tonight, or no? Or has this already aired?
I'll
either before or after this video has dropped, there will have been or will be a live stream. We're doing it live because we wanted to do it on Taylor's birthday, but the only time the panelists could record was Taylor's birthday. So we're like, hey, we'll do it live because I don't want to risk editing it and uploading it and it be the 14th. So it's going to be this tonight, I guess. It's a bracket of 128 songs because we couldn't just do 64. But we're going to go through a little bit quicker. And yeah, I'm very excited to see which song comes on top. I've talked about my favorite songs here, but I'm just one vote. So, I was pretty open about it. But it'll be really interesting once we get really down to like the 8 and 4 and 2, like really trying to determine what the best song is. And all the albums are represented, including 3 songs from outside her albums, one from 50 Shades of Grey, one from Cats, and one from Where the Crawdads Sing. And then obviously the Hunger Games songs are there too, but that's part of Red already. But so very cool, very excited, and thanks for having me as always, Chad. And this was awesome. Y'all are awesome. Taylor Swift knowledgeable people, so it was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. If you enjoyed this album ranking, please go check that song bracket out because it's going to be very different. Because this is how like the albums are, but like songs, I think it's going to be very interesting because I had a really big hot take, I think, with 1989 being so low. But
his favorite song is "Shake It Off," right, Chad?
Then again, I do love some songs from 1989, so we'll have to see when we pit up songs against each other how that plays. And I may have some even hotter takes there. I'm not sure. We'll see. But I did want to say thanks everybody again for this, especially Hannah being her first time.
Yeah.
She had so many great thoughts as well. And I just love having bringing more people into the channel and stuff like that. So yeah, I think we've done everything we could do with Taylor Swift, as I said, and I don't think there's any more plugs. I've plugged everything already, and oh my God, the one thing that I always forget. Are you ranking with me?
Yes, we are, Chad.
Yeah, James isn't here, so I'll say yes.